Chapter 133. Go to watch net. After they sat down, Zhang Guojing took the initiative to talk to Chao Kefi and flattered her without batting an eyelid. Go to watch net? Go to watch net. Although Tan Shui was also a first-class beauty, compared with Chao Kefi she was a notch lower. She saw that Zhang Guojing, who had been flattering her all the way, had turned to another person so quickly. She was jealous and resentful, and even Li Yundong was not pleasing to the eye. Zhang Guojing had been talking about what he had seen and heard all this time, with no lack of bragging and showing off. From time to time, his eyes swept over Li Yundong, who was silent opposite him, full of superiority. Chao Kefi had been in this circle for so long, so she was naturally quite sensitive to these things. She smiled and talked to Zhang Guojing, while paying attention to Li Yundong's mood faintly, for fear that the boy could not help but leave in anger. But the more Chao Kefi paid attention to Li Yundong, the more unhappy Zhang Guojing was, and the more he showed off. Hey, let me tell you, there was a martial arts actor in a martial arts film last time. He was really amazing. Zhang Guojing said, dancing with his hands and spitting. That guy with one elbow smashed 3 blue bricks. 3 blue bricks, not prop bricks or red bricks, but the kind of blue bricks that were baked in the stone kiln. Damn, with one hit they were all smashed. That's a real master. Hey, can you do it? Zhang Guojing was talking extravagantly when he suddenly led the topic to Li Yundong. Li Yundong glanced at him, smiled, and did not speak. There was a different meaning hidden in his smile, like a silent lion looking at a barking wild dog. This kind of smile made Zhang Guojing very unhappy. He said, Hey, what are you laughing at? Are you looking down on me or something? Chao Kefi quickly came out to smooth things over and change the topic. Guojing, go on. I'm listening attentively. Zhang Guojing glanced at Li Yundong, smiled disdainfully, and then continued to talk nonsense. Tan Shui was a little tired of listening to him, so she turned her eyes and began to look him up and down. Although they had looked down on this boy from the beginning, he did not show the slightest bit of anger or agitation. On the contrary, he exuded a calmness that did not match his age. Tan Shui looked at Li Yundong from head to toe. He's a good boy. Tan Shui said, sizing Li Yundong up. It's rare to see such a heroic boy in the circle these days. Where did Chao Kefi find him? DSK, I wonder how much a month's rent is? The entertainment industry was a big dive vat. It was not uncommon for men to be mistresses of women and vice versa. Many people love to talk about news like which female star is being kept by which rich man, but in fact, many handsome male stars who had just debuted were also kept by rich women. After Tan Shui looked at Li Yundong for a while, she suddenly had an idea. Under the cover of the table, she gently touched his calf with her foot. Watch net. 7KOM. Rainbow caret asterisk literature underscore learning % super hashtag speed. Update. Li Yundong felt the movement under the table. He frowned and quietly sat back a little. Tan Shui sneered inwardly. Damn it, still pretending to be innocent. I don't believe you can keep pretending for long. She leaned her upper body on the table and leaned forward slightly, revealing her full and deep cleavage for Li Yundong to see. Tan Shui's expression did not change, but she inadvertently glanced at Li Yundong. Her eyes were full of seduction. She reached out her foot again under the table to touch his calf. This time Li Yundong had nowhere to hide. He was angry. Who are these people? Even the bodies in the sauna are much more luxurious than theirs. Li Yundong coughed dryly and stood up. I'm going to the bathroom, he said to Chao Kefi. Chao Kefi nodded at him with a smile. Tan Shui rolled her eyes and smiled. Me too. Then she followed Li Yundong out of the bathroom. When Li Yundong reached the door of the bathroom, he heard a delicate voice behind him. Hey handsome, why are you so heartless? Are you angry at me just now? Li Yundong turned his head and saw Tan Shui smiling at him seductively. Li Yundong smiled politely and said, Miss Tan Shui, I need to go to the bathroom. I'll talk to you later, okay? Tan Shui saw that there was no one around, so she bravely leaned over and giggled. Why are you in such a hurry? Hey, Chao Kefi said that you are a master. I think you are a master in bed, right? How much money does she pay you every month? I'll give you as much as you want. How about you come with me? Good, you think I'm a male prostitute? Li Yundong was burning with anger. He sneered and said, then go ask President Chao. Excuse me. After saying that, he went into the bathroom. Go to see the net. 7KOM. See. Tan Shui was so angry that she stamped her feet and cursed in a low voice. Damn it, I gave you face but you don't want it. What's so great about you? F***CK. After that, she also rushed into the bathroom angrily. She looked at herself in the mirror and panted. What's so good about Chow Kefi? Am I worse than her? Humph, toy boy, don't be arrogant. Just wait and see. Li Yundong went into the bathroom. After a while, Zhang Guojing also came in. He stood next to the urinal next to Li Yundong, unzipped his pants, looked at Li Yundong and sneered. Young man, the food in this circle is not delicious. If you don't have 3/3, don't go to Liangshan. If you don't have a diamond, don't take on this porcelain work. As he said that, he reached out a hand and wanted to pat Li Yundong on the shoulder. Li Yundong glanced at his hand and dodged it quietly. Zhang Guojing's face darkened. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly heard a voice coming from the bathroom. Mao Shan Tru beating Kung Fu, the 8 martials show their magic power. It is as urgent as the law, the great demon subduing emperor of the 3 realms, the holy emperor Guan, please come to me. As soon as the voice sounded, Li Yundong felt a chill run down his spine. He immediately pulled up his pants and turned around. With a bang, a door flew out of the bathroom and a burly bare-chested man walked out. His muscles were like tree roots. It was Lin Yu who had fought with Li Yundong before. It's you? Li Yundong's chi suddenly surged and the bones in his body crackled. He was extremely vigilant, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Zhang Guojing, who was peeing, suddenly saw this scene. He was so shocked that his body trembled and a large area of his pants was wet. He stammered, "You." Before he could finish his words, he saw Lin Yu look at Li Yundong with a proud face and say, "Jinren Li, we meet again. This time no one else will intervene. Let's fight here." Li Yundong knew that it was a blessing, not a curse. If it was a curse, he couldn't avoid it. He took a deep breath and mobilized all the essence chi and chi in his body. The chi of his 5 internal organs also flew to the top of his head and then quickly dispersed to all parts of his body. This was the gathering of 3 flowers and 5 chis in one's head. Lin Yu's body could change from an old man in his 50s or 90s to a young man in his 20s or 30s by mobilizing the primordial chi hidden deep in his body and the divine chi borrowed from heaven and earth. Li Yundong mobilized the huge and vigorous Jindan's primordial chi in his body. Although he couldn't form an extremely strong physical change like Lin Yu's, the muscles on the surface of his body also bulged, and his blood vessels protruded one by one. They were as hard as stones. Lin Yu cupped his hands and said, "Jinren Li, I'm sorry. Today I must decide the winner between us. Let's see whether your sect is stronger or my immortal fist sect is stronger." After that, he opened his eyes angrily. With a snap, he stepped forward quickly with his right fist in front and his left fist behind. A short punch went straight to Li Yundong's chest. Li Yundong knew that he couldn't use his full strength in the bathroom, so it was most suitable for his opponent to fight at close range. Therefore, without thinking, he imitated Lin Yu's moves and met them head-on. Using strength to defeat strength, using violence to control violence. As soon as the two of them got close, there was a crackling sound of hand-to-hand combat. Zhang Guojing, who was standing to one side, had goosebumps all over his body when he heard it. He stood there in a daze, staring at Li Yundong, who was fighting fiercely with Lin Yu without any reaction at all. Tan Shui, who was in the women's restroom, was touching up her makeup in front of the mirror. She kept cursing Li Yundong. She had been in the entertainment industry for several years, but she had never seen such a pretentious guy. "Why are you so arrogant? Who do you think you are?" Tan Shui sneered. She was about to take out her lipstick and wipe it on her mouth when she suddenly heard a rumbling sound. Tan Shui was stunned. She muttered unconsciously, "What's going on?" Then there was another rumbling sound, and the water in the sink in front of her trembled. Tan Shui was stunned and said, "Earthquake? Tiannan City is not in the earthquake zone." Suddenly there was a loud rumbling sound. The bricks in the wall in front of her were sent flying, and a big hole was broken. 2 entangled figures flew out like cannonballs. Tan Shui was so scared that her hands trembled, and her lipstick fell to the ground. Her mind went blank. She saw Lin Yu punch Li Yundong in the chest. Li Yundong groaned, and his hands suddenly expanded. He grabbed Lin Yu's body and threw him behind him. With a bang, Lin Yu knocked the door of the bathroom to the ground, and then smashed the toilet bowl into pieces. The moment Li Yundong threw Lin Yu, he quickly stepped forward and stomped on him. Lin Yu's waist sprang up like a spring, and his whole body bounced up. He flew into Li Yundong's arms, hugged his waist, and slammed him into the wall again. With a bang, the broken bricks in the wall fell everywhere. Li Yundong was hugged by Lin Yu's waist, and his back hit the wall again. His body shook, and before he could fight back, Lin Yu's fists fell on his lower abdomen like rain. But the lower abdomen of the human body was the lower dantian, and it was the place where qi was the most vigorous. As long as one cultivated it well, it would be one of the places where one could take a beating. Li Yundong felt the punches on his abdomen like rain, but he gritted his teeth and grabbed Lin Yu's waist. With a loud roar, he lifted Lin Yu up and then, like a falling onion, he slammed Lin Yu's head into the hard marble sink. With a bang, Lin Yu's head hit the marble sink and a big hole appeared. Li Yundong's fist came smashing down on his head. Lin Yu heard the fierce wind behind his head, and he immediately broke free from Li Yundong's grip like a loach. He dodged to the side and then there was a loud bang. Li Yundong's fist smashed the marble sink into pieces. Lin Yu was depressed. He had thought that by finding a narrow space, he could completely subdue Li Yundong and vent his anger. But no matter what he did, Li Yundong would follow his moves, just like last time at the school gate. After a few rounds, Lin Yu realized that no matter what moves he made, Li Yundong would immediately know as if he had a telepathic connection. Therefore he simply didn't make any moves. The two of them fought hand to hand like hooligans. Lin Yu rolled a few times on the ground and gasped violently. He stared at Li Yundong fiercely and said, "Junrenli is really good at martial arts. But you used my moves to deal with me. What kind of skill is that?" All of Li Yundong's clothes had been torn to shreds. He reached out and tore them off, revealing his strong muscles that were not inferior to Lin Yu's. He sneered and said, "It doesn't matter if it's a black cat or a white cat, as long as it can catch mice, it's a good cat." After that he opened his eyes and shouted. The chi in his body surged to his right fist, and a fierce fist aura blasted toward Lin Yu. As he waved his fist, 3 cracking sounds came from Li Yundong's arm, like firecrackers exploding one after another. The surface of the fist compressed the air to the point that the shock waves could be seen spreading around with the naked eye. "Take this. /OM/" Chapter 134. Go to watch net. Lin Yu knew that this punch was extremely fierce and it was filled with pure yang qi. It was difficult to resist, so he rolled away and dodged the attack. Go to watch net. Go to watch net. The punch landed on the marble sink, and with a muffled bang the surface of the sink could no longer withstand the impact. With a crash the bottom shelf fell down and smashed at Tan Shue's feet. Tan Shue's body trembled, and her expression twisted in horror. She opened her mouth and wanted to shout, but her voice was hoarse and she couldn't shout at all. All she could think of was, "Who the hell is this guy?" Lin Yu dodged Li Yundong's heavy punch and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. He quickly took out a golden needle from the seam of his shoe and inserted it into his Baihui acupoint on the top of his head. His other hand quickly pinched a finger and he shouted, "Maoshan True Beating God Kung Fu, the 8 martials show their magic power. As urgent as the law, Jiutian Shang Fu General Zhu Yuan of the North Pole, Marshal Tianpeng, please come to me." Li Yundong was stunned. Another god? What kind of god is it this time? Why is it so convenient for this guy to invite gods as if he's treating a guest? Jiutian Shang Fu General Zhu Yuan of the North Pole, Marshal Tianpeng? What the hell is this? Wait. Grand Marshal Tianpeng Perfected Lord? The expression on Li Yundong's face suddenly became very strange. Did he ask Marshal Canopy to possess him? Who is Marshal Tianpeng? Everyone on earth knows. Zhu Beiji. Even though he was facing a powerful enemy, Li Yundong couldn't help but laugh. He was about to speak when he suddenly heard a familiar voice. "Yundong, dodge." It was Su Chan's voice. Li Yundong subconsciously dodged to the side. Suddenly, he heard a loud bang coming from the side for no reason. A huge pit had been smashed on the ground. If he was hit, he would probably be turned into a mass of meat paste immediately. Li Yundong looked at Lin Yu in horror, his heart beating wildly. He saw that Lin Yu's body had expanded a little. At this time he looked nearly 2 meters tall. His whole body was purplish red, and the blood vessels on his body were like dark red snakes twisting and circling around his body. It was extremely terrifying. Jiutian Shang Fu. Net. Super_speed. More. New look. At this moment, this person's eyes were filled with terrifying golden light. His entire person was like a purple gold war god that had descended from the heavens to the mortal world, majestic and insufferably arrogant. Holy sh*teach. Li Yundong said, startled. Is this guy on steroids? Was it that exaggerated? How could asking Zhu Beiji to possess him be more powerful than Guan Yu? Is there any justice in this world? Su Chan's voice rang in Li Yundong's ear again. Yundong, come out quickly. Don't fight with him at this time. This kind of god-inviting technique has a time limit. You haven't mastered it yet, so you're no match for him. Come out now. Out of absolute trust in Su Chan, Li Yundong immediately jumped into the men's washroom next door, then quickly ran out of the hotel. Where do you think you're going? Lin Yu shouted, his voice shaking the broken wall and causing the lime powder to fall straight down. Then his footsteps rumbled as he chased after Li Yundong. For a moment, the washroom, which had been turned upside down a moment ago, suddenly became as silent as a graveyard. Tan Shui and Zhang Guojing, who were equally dumbfounded, stood motionless as if they had been petrified. The two of them stared at each other through the big hole in the wall. After a while, a piece of crumbling lime fell from the hole in the men's and women's washroom and hit the ground. Only then did the two of them wake up from their stupor. Tan Shui was dumbfounded. She reached out and touched the big hole in the wall, as if she wanted to see what material the wall was made of. How could such a big hole have been broken by someone so easily? But when she reached out to touch it, the tiles on the hole almost cut her delicate fingertips. It was so painful that she immediately withdrew her hand. The pain clearly told her that everything in front of her was real. How is this possible? Tan Shui stammered. Zhang Guojing, on the other hand, had been in the position of peeing since the beginning of the fight between Li Yundong and Lin Guo. By the time he came to his senses, his pants were already soaked. He quickly put on his pants, looked at the wall in front of him, and then looked at his clenched fists. Then he punched the wall. Go to C. 7KO, Hong Om look. With a muffled thud, Zhang Guojing squatted down with his fists clenched. What's wrong? What's wrong? The hotel's security guards rushed over at this time. As soon as they entered the washroom, they sucked in a breath of cold air. They were stunned when they saw Tan Shui and Zhang Guojing standing in the washroom. Hey, aren't you two celebrities? What happened to this place? The security guards suddenly became excited. They looked around and asked, are you guys filming a movie? Where's the director? Where's the camera? Zhang Guojing and Tan Shui looked at each other, speechless. Li Yundong didn't even have time to say goodbye to Chao Kefi and rushed out of the hotel's revolving door. As soon as he went out, he saw Su Chan coming up to him. She took his hand and ran, saying, let's go. His divine power will disappear in 5 minutes. Li Yundong asked curiously, why are you here? Su Chan looked at Li Yundong eagerly. I'm worried about you. Li Yundong chuckled. The unhappiness he had caused with Tan Shui and Zhang Guojing had flown away. He turned his head and saw that Lin Guo was chasing after him like a rampaging beast. He even smashed the revolving glass door of the hotel, causing the doorman and security guards at the door to shout. As Li Yundong ran, he asked loudly, is this guy done? By the way, didn't you say that cultivators are very low-key? Why is this guy so arrogant? Su Chan looked back. She took Li Yundong's hand and ran all the way shouting, how would I know? Maybe there's something wrong with this guy's head. Li Yundong and Su Chan ran all the way like parkour. They were agile and moved like the wind. Some passers-by stopped and looked at them. Some curiously wanted to take out their mobile phones to take pictures, but as soon as they took out their phones, the two of them disappeared. After Lin Guo had asked the second god to possess him, although his strength had greatly increased, his speed had decreased a lot. Seeing that he couldn't catch up with Li Yundong and Su Chan, he snorted coldly, raised his hand to pull out the golden needle inserted in the Baihui acupoint on his head, and then quickly disappeared around the corner of the street. Li Yundong and Su Chan ran for a long time. Seeing that Lin Yu didn't chase after them again, he breathed a sigh of relief. Is this guy on stimulants? So exaggerated? By the way, why is Marshal Tianping more powerful than Guan Yu? It doesn't make sense. Su Chan said, Marshal Tianping is in charge of the Big Dipper. He is one of the 8 marshals in the Heaven Realm. Naturally, he is much more powerful than Guan Yu. Li Yundong was stunned. Then Zhu Beiji in the journey to the west was so useless. Su Chan laughed. Can the journey to the west be taken seriously? Li Yundong muttered to himself, the thing about asking Marshal Tianpeng to possess him has already happened. What else can't be taken seriously? He said to Su Chan, then what should we do now? Go home. Su Chan thought for a moment and said, go to a crowded place. We'll talk about it later. Standing on the roof of a building not far away, Ziyuan, who was watching all of this from above, frowned slightly and said in a low voice, is the god-tapping sect so presumptuous now? What nonsense! Ruan Hongling, who was standing to one side, asked, Sister Ziyuan, how long are we going to watch them like this? Ziyuan pondered for a moment and said, don't worry, let's wait and see. Ruan Hongling was anxious and angry. She couldn't wait to take back her magical item from Li Yundong's hands, but she didn't dare to disobey her senior sister's wishes. Suddenly, her heart skipped a beat and she said, Sister Ziyuan, I'll go and take a look. After saying that, her body moved and disappeared in an instant. Ziyuan couldn't stop Ruan Hongling. As soon as she opened her mouth, she saw that Ruan Hongling had disappeared. She let out a long sigh and shook her head. She didn't chase after her, but just looked in the direction where Li Yundong was in the distance. After turning a few corners, Lin Yu's body gradually returned to the physique of a normal person. From a young man in his 20s or 30s, he had once again become a thin old man with wrinkles all over his body. Lin Yu turned his head and looked in the direction where Li Yundong was. He snorted coldly and said, "You run fast." As he said that, he turned back and saw a slim and graceful girl standing in front of him. The girl was wearing a high school uniform and was extremely beautiful. Her hair was tied in a ponytail, revealing a full and bright forehead. Lin Yu's eyes flashed with amazement. He laughed and said, "Little sister, get out of the way. Don't block my way." However, the girl made a gesture, bowed, and said, "Amateus Ruan Hongling, the 45th generation disciple of Jinren Wang of the Shangqing sect of Mount Longhu of the Southern Taoist sect, greets you." Lin Yu's expression suddenly became serious. He cupped his hands and bowed respectfully. "It turns out to be the Supreme Taoist Master. I'm Lin Yu, a disciple of Jiolong Huang." Ruan Hongling was young, but at this time her words and actions were very old. She formed a palm with one hand and clasped her thumb in front of her chest. She said, "May I know why you are here?" Lin Yu sighed, waved his hand and said, "Alas, my disciple is clumsy and stubborn. I lost in a competition, so I came to get back at him." Ruan Hongling immediately asked, "Do you have a grudge against someone named Li Yundong?" Lin Yu was stunned and said, "How do you know?" A trace of hatred flashed in the corner of Ruan Hongling's eyes. "Is there another witch with him?" Lin Yu suddenly became vigilant. "My dear friend, what do you want to do?" Ruan Hongling sneered and said, "How about I join forces with you to deal with them? I'll deal with that witch and you'll deal with Li Yundong?" This. Lin Yu pondered for a moment and was a little hesitant. After all, he was a famous person in the cultivation world, but if he joined forces with the people of the Jingyi school to deal with two juniors, his reputation would be a little bad. Seeing his hesitation, Ruan Hongling tried to persuade him, "Everyone has the right to punish evil spirits. Li Yundong is with a witch, so he must not be a good person. Jinren Lin, why don't you take this opportunity to enforce justice on behalf of heaven? Even if others find out about this in the future, they will praise you for your chivalry." Lin Yu's heart skipped a beat. He raised his head and nodded slowly. "Okay, then when shall we do it?" Ruan Hongling was overjoyed and said, "There's no time to lose. Let's hurry up and catch up. As soon as there are fewer people around, we'll take action immediately." C/OM/ Chapter 135. Go to Watch Net. Li Yundong and Su Chan hid in the pedestrian street in the center of the city for a while. Seeing that Lin hadn't followed them, they slowly relaxed their vigilance. The girl began to look at the pedestrian street curiously. She pulled Li Yundong's arm and said, "Yundong, I think this place looks so familiar." Li Yundong smiled and said, "You silly girl, isn't this the place where we bought clothes last time?" Su Chan's eyes suddenly lit up. "I still want to buy clothes." Li Yundong was so scared that he shivered. He thought to himself, "Don't joke. The last time I bought clothes I went bankrupt. If you buy clothes again, won't I have to sell my kidney?" Li Yundong pretended to be angry and glared at Su Chan. "Why buy clothes? I don't have money." "Oh," Su Chan said. She pouted and tugged at Li Yundong's shirt to follow him. At the same time, she stared at the various clothes on both sides of the street. After a while she couldn't help but say weakly, "I'm just looking. I'm not buying anything, okay?" Li Yundong was worried. He smiled bitterly and said, "If I had money, I would buy these two streets for you. Go to WatchNet. Literature. But now we don't have money, do we?" Su Chan nodded again and reluctantly looked away. She held Li Yundong's arm and said, "Sir, this girl must be making things difficult for you, right?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "What is it difficult for me?" Su Chan said pitifully, "This girl always makes you spend money. You won't dislike me, will you?" Li Yundong said with heartache and self-blame, "What nonsense are you talking about? It's my fault. I should make a lot of money for this girl to spend." Speaking of this, Li Yundong couldn't help but sigh again. It's not easy to get a job from President Chow, but now it seems that it's ruined again. Alas, I have a grudge against money in this life. Su Chan comforted him softly, "Sir, you will definitely be very rich in the future. I have confidence in you." Li Yundong fixed his eyes on Su Chan for a long time. He was moved and smiled. Girl, why are you so obedient? Su Chan giggled and her eyes narrowed into a line. Girl, you're so obedient. Do you like me? Li Yundong waved his hand. Of course I like it. Su Chan grinned from ear to ear. I like myself too. Li Yundong laughed heartily and rubbed the little girl's head. You're so cute, he said. Let's go. I can't afford to buy clothes for you today, but I can still afford to take you to a snack. Su Chan screamed and dodged his claws. She was just about to pout when she heard that he was going to take her to eat something. Eh. I want to eat that. As he spoke, he pointed at the barbecued squid skewers in front of the stall on the pedestrian street. Watch net. Rainbow carrot asterisk literature underscore learning % super hashtag speed. Update. Li Yundong hesitated for a moment. This stuff is really spicy. Aren't you afraid of getting pimples on your face? Su Chan giggled. I've been in the Zhuji phase for a long time. I'm not afraid. Li Yundong sighed. Now that you mention it, I just remembered that I haven't reached the Zhuji phase yet. I've been delayed by the troubles of the secular world. Su Chan smiled. You'll reach the Zhuji phase when we get back. Don't worry. Let's eat first. Li Yundong nodded and took Su Chan to the barbecue stall. He bought 9 skewers of grilled squid, 3 for each of them. They ate as they walked. When they reached the entrance of McDonald's, Su Chan pointed at the fake McDonald's and said, I want to eat the ice cream here. Li Yundong smiled lovingly. Okay. The two of them walked to the ice cream delivery window. Li Yundong said, 2 sundaes please? The waiter behind the window asked, what flavor? Li Yundong turned his head and asked Su Chan, what flavor do you want? Su Chan was enjoying the grilled squid so much that she sucked in a breath of cold air. She fanned her mouth and asked, what flavors do you have? There are chocolate, vanilla, taro and other flavors, the waiter said. Su Chan looked at Li Yundong at a loss. She didn't know what the 3 flavors were. She looked at the grilled squid in her hand and suddenly asked, do you have a spicy flavor? The corner of the waiter's eyes twitched. She didn't know how to answer, so she looked at Li Yundong as if asking for help. Li Yundong laughed so hard that he couldn't breathe. His mischievous spirit returned and he said to the waiter seriously, the little girl is naughty. Just ignore her. The waiter laughed a few times and asked dryly, what flavor do you want? Li Yundong thought about it seriously and said, give her a garlic flavor. The corner of the waiter's eyes twitched again. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but she looked at Li Yundong's serious face and felt that he didn't seem to be joking, so she explained patiently, sir, we don't have these 2 flavors of ice cream here. Go to CNET. Rainbow carrot asterisk literature underscore learning % super hashtag fast. Update. See. Li Yundong said in surprise, really? But I have all kinds of food at KFC. The waiter was shocked. KFC sells spicy and garlic sundaes? Li Yundong looked even more surprised than she was. What? You didn't know? The waiter looked frightened and confused. I didn't know. Li Yundong tried hard to hold back his laughter. He laughed so hard that his intestines were about to break. He said with a look of blame, hey, you guys can't keep up with the evolution of the varieties. Forget it, just give me a vanilla and a chocolate one. Alas, what a killjoy. The waiter made 2 sundaes for Li Yundong and handed them to him. Li Yundong searched his body and found that he had given all his money to Su Chan. He said to her, hey, pay up. Su Chan nodded and took out the money and handed it to Li Yundong. After Li Yundong paid the bill, he dragged Su Chan away, sighing as he walked. The waiter looked at him in bewilderment. Does KFC really have spicy and garlic sundaes? The waiter muttered to himself. What's that smell? Is it edible? I'll try it after work. Li Yundong and Su Chan walked to a corner and hid there, laughing with their bellies full. Su Chan stared at Li Yundong with wide eyes as she ate her ice cream. She didn't understand why he was laughing like that. Su Chan ate her ice cream for a while. Suddenly she thought of something and shouted, no. Didn't you treat me to it? Why do I have to pay for it? Li Yundong laughed. Hey little girl. You're still fussing over this? Su Chan smiled shyly. I heard on TV that if a girl controls a man's money, they can't run away. Li Yundong laughed and pinched Su Chan's nose. I knew it. Watching soap operas is bad for you. Okay, I'll let you control it. Come on, I'll take you to buy something for your money. After that, Li Yundong took Su Chan on a stroll down the pedestrian street until they found a shop that sold trinkets. He picked out a pink He11 Kitty piggy bank with a key lock and handed it to Su Chan. You can deposit your money in this from now on. he said, handing it to Suchan. Suchan smiled and hugged the piggy bank. It's so pretty. I like it. Li Yundong laughed. You like it, right? Suchan nodded and skipped out of the store. Li Yundong quickly pulled her back. Hey, give me the money. Huh? Me again? Suchan said, then reluctantly fished out the money from her pocket. Suchan said, then reluctantly pulled out the money. Li Yundong laughed. I didn't know you were such a miser, he said, poking a finger on her forehead. Suchan held the piggy bank tightly with one hand and covered her forehead with the other. She made a face at Li Yundong. After buying the eggs, Suchan carefully stuffed the money into the piggy bank with her back to Li Yundong. When she finished stuffing the last note into the piggy bank, Li Yundong suddenly walked up to her and snatched the piggy bank from her. Then he raised it up high and laughed proudly. Suchan had no idea what was going on. Suchan was furious. She clung to Li Yundong like a koala bear and tried to snatch the piggy bank from his hand. Give it back. You bad guy. Give it back. Li Yundong laughed and played with Suchan for a while. Then he handed the piggy bank back to her. Suchan took the piggy bank and looked at it carefully. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. After looking at it for a long time, she found that the piggy bank was locked. She smacked her head and pounced on Li Yundong again. Give me back the key. Li Yundong laughed and clenched his fists. I'm not giving it back. Come and get it yourself. Suchan was flustered and exasperated. She pried Li Yundong's fingers open one by one. There was nothing there. She tried to pry open the fingers of his other hand one by one, but there was still no sign of it. The little girl pouted, and tears immediately welled up in her eyes, as if they were about to drip down. Li Yundong saw that the girl was going to cry. He quickly took the key out and handed it to Suchan. Suchan immediately burst into laughter and took the key. Humph, she said, shaking her head. Now all your money is in my hands, she said. You have to listen to me. With that, Suchan proudly stuffed the key into the piggy bank, then held the piggy bank tightly in her arms. Let's see how you're going to snatch it from me again, she said. Li Yundong laughed. You big idiot, he said. You put the key in too? How are you going to open it later? That's right. Suchan suddenly came to her senses. She quickly took out the piggy bank and tried to pull the lock, but it didn't budge. She stared at Li Yundong. What should I do? Li Yundong tried hard not to laugh. He pinched Suchan's cheek. Now you know how pigs die, don't you? Stupid pig. Stupid pig. You can smash it when you need money in the future. Now let's go home. Oh? She followed Li Yundong for a while, then suddenly thought of something. She looked up and asked, But I can't open the piggy bank. What if you secretly take money when I'm not around? But I can't open the piggy bank. What if you secretly take money when I'm not around? Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If you can't open it, do you think I can? What's your IQ? Suchan blinked. What's IQ? Li Yundong slapped his forehead. Forget it. Let's go home. We've been wandering around for so long. I don't think that guy will come after us again. Then he suddenly thought of something. By the way, do you think they'll wait for us at our place? Suchan's mind was on the piggy bank in her arms. I don't think so, she said casually. Li Yundong thought for a moment. Forget it. Let's go back to the hotel and get our things. If it doesn't work, we can return the house. We can get a refund for the deposit. The two of them took a taxi home. When they arrived at the door, Suchan couldn't help but smile happily at the thought that Li Yundong would make hot food when they got home. Open the door. Open the door. I want to eat. Suchan urged. Li Yundong opened the door and sighed. Hey, why do you only know how to eat? Didn't you eat a lot just now? Are you hungry again? Are you still growing? Suchan's eyes turned into crescent moons. Yeah. How did you know? Li Yundong opened the door and changed his shoes at the door. Of course I know. I check your body often. Come. Let me check your body. Suchan entered the door and changed her shoes. She giggled and was about to say something when her expression suddenly changed. Yundong, watch out, she shouted. All of a sudden, a figure appeared behind Li Yundong. The figure was shaped like a monkey. Like a cannon, it punched at Li Yundong's waist. Almost at the same time, a figure appeared in the living room. Demon, he shouted. Die. Then a green light went straight for Suchan. /om/ Chapter 136. Go to watch net. Lin Yu's sneak attack was fast and fierce. If this punch hit Li Yundong's waist, Li Yundong's kidney would be crippled. Go to watch net. Go to watch net. The kidneys were the guards of the 5 internal organs. If a person was compared to a country, then the kidneys were the national defense forces of the country, specifically used to resolve all kinds of internal and external troubles of the country. If the kidneys were damaged, then the national defense forces of the country would collapse. Although it would not be immediately destroyed, it was inevitable that the country would be weak. A strong kidney would make a person energetic and powerful. A weak kidney would make a person listless and weak. In traditional Chinese medicine, it was believed that all diseases start from the kidneys. The root cause of all diseases could be found in the kidneys, which showed the importance of the kidneys among the 5 internal organs. If Li Yundong's kidneys were damaged, not only would he be unable to cultivate for the rest of his life, but he would also become a useless person who could not carry anything on his shoulders. When Su Chan saw this, she was shocked and anxious. She ignored herself and rushed toward Lin Yu, who was behind Li Yundong. Li Yundong, on the other hand, saw a green light rushing toward Su Chan. All he could think of was Su Chan. He also ignored Lin Yu behind him and went straight to Su Chan. The two of them only had each other in their hearts, but a strange combination of factors caused a mismatch. The duel that was supposed to be won by Ruan Hongling against Su Chan and Lin Yu against Li Yundong had become Su Chan against Lin Yu, and Li Yundong against Ruan Hongling. Lin Youqing's divine power could be said to be amazing. His strength was a bit greater than Li Yundong's, but his speed had decreased because of this. What he was most afraid of was an opponent like Su Chan who was extremely fast. Similarly, although Ruan Hongling's spiritual power was stronger than Li Yundong's and Su Chan's, she was born with extreme yin qi. She was most afraid of Li Yundong's pure yang qi, which did not have a trace of yin qi. In the blink of an eye, Li Yundong and Su Chan had destroyed the sure-kill situation that Ruan Hongling and Lin Yu had created. If either Li Yundong or Su Chan had the slightest bit of selfishness, they would immediately be entangled by Ruan Hongling and Lin Yu, and the consequences would be unimaginable. However, Ruan Hongling had used 3 mysterious sky bone-piercing nails to deliver the killing blow. Even though they missed Su Chan's vitals, one of them still nailed Su Chan's shoulder. Su Chan let out a muffled groan in pain. Su Chan pounced on Li Yundong, blocking his fist with one hand and striking at Lin Yu's chest with the other. The power of Lin Yu's punch was no small matter. Su Chan caught it with her palm. With a crack, the sound of bones breaking came from her forearm. She immediately groaned in pain. At this time, Li Yunyang pounced on Ruan Hongling like a cannonball. He punched at Ruan Hongling, and the majestic and vigorous Jindan's qi in his body was like a blazing flame, burning Ruan Hongling so much that she screamed and quickly retreated. As soon as Li Yundong's punch missed, he heard Su Chan moan in pain. He turned his head to look, and his eyes immediately widened. His hair stood on end. He was furious. "You're courting death." When a person was extremely angry, they would lose their rationality, but at the same time, their strength would multiply. The reason was that when a person was angry, their heart would beat faster, and their blood would flow faster. The liver would quickly release a large amount of blood and liver qi. This qi and blood would quickly circulate throughout the body, and then mobilize the yuanyang qi hidden deep in the body, allowing a person to exert strength that they normally couldn't. Go to the internet. 7KOM. Literature. Ordinary people usually had the strength of 50 kilograms, but when they were angry they could have the strength of 150 kilograms or even 200 kilograms. This was already the case for ordinary people, so Li Yundong's Jindan body was even more frightening. The functions of Li Yundong's 5 internal organs were more than 10 times that of ordinary people. Once he moved, his strength was unbelievably terrifying. Li Yundong's heart thumped wildly, as if a mighty general was beating a war drum with all his might. The sound of the war drum was passionate and indignant, and all the organs in Li Yundong's body entered a state of excitement and fanaticism. Then Li Yundong's liver began to release visceral qi and blood, and his kidneys began to secrete adrenaline and kidney qi crazily. The liver was the general and it was in charge of external attacks. The kidneys were the guards and they were in charge of internal attacks. The qi and blood produced by these 2 organs, one inside and one outside, were like a mighty army, constantly sent to every part of Li Yundong's body, making him full of divine power. The qi and blood in Li Yundong's body surged wildly, and all the bones in his body crackled like beans being fried. His whole body seemed to have swelled up, his muscles bulged and his blood vessels protruded like old vines. Li Yundong shouted and slapped Lin Yu with his palm. The air around him was squeezed by him to the point that it seemed to have been sucked dry, turning into a vacuum. Although Lin Yu had invited a god to possess him, he had done it twice in a day, which had consumed a lot of his qi and blood. Seeing that Li Yundong's palm was coming at him fiercely, he gritted his teeth, turned his wrist and slapped Li Yundong's palm. "You're courting death." Li Yundong's face was full of blood vessels, and he looked extremely ferocious. As soon as his palm touched Lin Yu, the Jindan's primordial qi in his body roared like a flood opening a dam. Pa! A crisp sound rang out. As soon as their arms touched, the floor of the room shook violently. Su Chan saw that the two of them were suddenly in a stalemate. She endured the pain, stretched out her other hand, and pointed at the Huagai acupoint on Lin Yu's chest. If the Huagai acupoint was hit, then the qi flowing up and down in the human body would be blocked. It was like a midstream hitting the water. It was like a battle at the front, and the rear was intercepted by someone. It could cause chaos in the army without a fight. When Ruan Hongling saw Su Chan make a move, she shouted and swung her hand. Another mysterious sky bone-piercing nail went straight for Su Chan's chest. Su Chan only wanted to help Li Yundong out, and she put her own safety at the back of her mind. She didn't dodge. She just gritted her teeth and barely moved her body, not letting the bone-piercing nail hit her vitals. Her slender hand still kept moving towards Lin Yu. Lin Yu was hit in the chest by Su Chan. He suddenly felt his chest tighten and short of breath, and he was powerless. Li Yundong suddenly shouted and pressed down with his palm. With a crack, the bones of Lin Yu's forearm were instantly shattered, and his whole body knelt down with a bang. Almost at the same time, Su Chan's chest was hit by Ruan Hongling's mysterious sky bone-piercing nail, and blood splattered everywhere. "Go to see the net." "Watch." Lin Yu let out a wild roar and quickly flashed out of the door. In a few flashes he disappeared into the building. He turned his head and glared at Ruan Hongling like an angry King Kong. "You hurt people again and again. Do you really think I can't kill you just because you're a woman?" Ruan Hongling's face darkened. She looked at Ruan Hongling coldly. Li Yundong's words were murderous and creepy, but Ruan Hongling, as an inner disciple of the Supreme Taoist sect, was not someone who would be scared away by a few words. Ruan Hongling stood on the edge of the balcony and scolded angrily, "You ignorant fool, don't you know that the woman in your arms is a fox spirit? Aren't you afraid that she will suck up all your yang qi in the future and turn you into a human? Don't you know that humans and demons are different and can't coexist? Those who violate it will go against the law of heaven." At this time Li Yundong was furious. How could he listen to her? He stood up, his eyes fierce and terrifying. He took a deep breath and the qi in his body surged to his throat. Then he suddenly shouted, "Get out!" Boom! Like a spring thunder, all the glass in the room shattered with a crash. The thunder talisman in Li Yundong's pocket floated out automatically as if it had a life of its own, shining with a burst of blue light in the air. Ruan Hongling was hit by the sound wave of the rolling yang qi. Suddenly, her qi and blood became restless, and the soul in her body was almost shaken out of her body. Ruan Hongling was shocked. She knew that if she let the boy in front of her roar again, the soul in her body would be shaken out of her body. In broad daylight, when the yang qi was at its strongest, the soul coming out of her body was really courting death. Moreover, the talisman floating in front of Li Yundong made Ruan Hongling tremble with fear. This is the Five Thunders righteous talisman? Ruan Hongling was so shocked that her face turned pale. Her heart was pounding. She looked at Li Yundong and Su Chan with hatred, not daring to stay any longer. Her body turned into a blue light and left like lightning. Seeing her leave, Li Yundong quickly put away the talisman, drew the curtains and then carried Su Chan to the bedroom. He asked nervously, "Su Chan, how are you? Say something, don't scare me." Su Chan's face was as pale as paper and her lips were pale. At this time she was being tortured by the immortal qi of the mysterious sky bone-piercing nail. Her body kept rolling on the bed, her hands and feet curled into a ball, and her body kept trembling. Li Yundong was so scared that his face turned pale. He picked up Su Chan and said, "Hold on, I'll take you to the hospital." When Su Chan heard this, she immediately grabbed Li Yundong's collar and struggled to say in a trembling voice, "Don't go, I'm fine. Take me back to the hotel. It's not safe here." Without saying anything, Li Yundong rushed out with Su Chan in his arms. When Su Chan reached the door, she suddenly remembered something. She pointed into the room and said reluctantly, There's something else." Li Yundong turned his head and saw Su Chan pointing at the Pinky 11 Kitty piggy bank lying on the carpet in the living room. Li Yundong didn't know whether he should be angry or laugh. "Are you still thinking about that thing at a time like this?" The little girl's body shrank into a ball in Li Yundong's arms, as if she was very cold. She couldn't help trembling and struggling to say, "Money, you'll have no money to spend." Li Yundong's heart shook, and he almost burst into tears. He picked up the piggy bank, then rushed downstairs with Su Chan in his arms. He stopped the taxi on the side of the road and shouted the address to the taxi driver. As the taxi driver drove, he kept looking at Su Chan and Li Yundong through the rearview mirror, feeling surprised and doubtful. Li Yundong gripped the piggy bank tightly. He was about to smash it open and take out the money to pay the taxi fare when Su Chan grabbed him and whispered, Don't smash it. I still have money in my pocket." Li Yundong was stunned. He reached into Su Chan's pocket and found a 50 yuan note. "Didn't you put all of it in there?" he asked. Su Chan forced a smile. "I was afraid that one day you'd take the piggy bank away and abandon me. I can still use this money to find Yuk." Li Yundong laughed, but his tears kept falling. He wiped away the tears on his face and stroked the messy hair on the little girl's cheeks lovingly. "Don't be silly. How could I not want you?" Su Chan gripped the hem of Li Yundong's shirt tightly. You won't abandon me just because I'm a witch, will you?" Li Yundong nodded. His voice was choked with sobs. "Yes. Little girl will always be my little girl. This uncle will never abandon you." Su Chan felt a little relieved. Although the two of them spoke in a low voice in the back seat, the driver in the front seat could hear them clearly. Although he didn't know what happened between the young man and woman in the back seat, the two of them spoke with deep attachment and lingering affection for each other. Their tone was lingering and sad. Even an iron man would be moved and a stone man would cry if he heard it. The driver was touched by their love. He stepped on the accelerator and arrived at the destination in 10 minutes. Li Yundong didn't have time to thank the driver. He dropped the 50 yuan note and rushed back to the hotel with Su Chan in his arms. As soon as they entered the hotel, Li Yundong closed the door and put Su Chan on the bed. "Su Chan, are you okay?" he asked anxiously. Su Chan's teeth were chattering. I'm fine," she said. "Turn around. Don't look at me. I'll be fine by myself for a while." Li Yundong looked at the large patch of blood on her chest in confusion. He pointed at it and asked anxiously, "Are you okay here?" Su Chan said in a trembling voice, "No, I'm fine. It's just a minor injury. The real injury is the Xiantian bone-piercing nail made of the immortal qi of the Jingyi school. As soon as it enters my body, it turns into a bone-eating qi which is extremely painful. I have to force this qi out. You turn around. Don't look at me, okay? Please." Li Yundong didn't know why Su Chan wanted him to turn around, but he still nodded, turned around and shouted at the wall, "Is this okay? Do you really not want my help?" Su Chan sat cross-legged on the bed and begged, "No, I can do it myself, but you must not turn around." Li Yundong was more and more confused, but he suppressed his curiosity and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. His mind was in a mess. When Su Chan saw Li Yundong turn around, she took a deep breath. Her lower abdomen bulged slightly and then quickly contracted. Slowly, her chest rose and fell, and her throat moved up and down, like a wave pushing something in her body to her throat. After a while, Su Chan suddenly spat out a 5-colored bead. It was her Niden. As soon as this Niden was spat out, the whole room suddenly shone brightly. Li Yundong was surprised and suspicious. Just as he was about to look back, he heard Su Chan say sadly, "Don't look back, please, Yundong." Only then did Li Yundong resist the urge and sit up straight. After the Niden was spat out by Su Chan, it kept spinning in front of her, emitting sighing gossamer. These gossamer went into Su Chan's body one by one and drew out the white gossamer inside her. As the Niden left Su Chan's body for a long time, Su Chan's body became more and more itchy. She knew that it was because she had lost the protection of the Niden and was about to reveal her true form. Su Chan was shocked and scared. She was afraid that her true form would be discovered by Li Yundong. But if she didn't pull out the bone-eating qi in her body as soon as possible, her life would be in danger. Su Chan was on tenterhooks as she pulled the bone-devouring qi out of her body. She kept praying in her heart that he wouldn't turn around. Bit by bit, the bone-devouring qi was extracted from her body, and she slowly turned into her fox form. This long and painful process of pulling out the qi was like the worst torture in the world. Su Chan felt that this time was as long as centuries. Li Yundong also felt that such a wait was a kind of deep torture. He really wanted to look back and see what was going on behind him, but he was also very worried that something would happen to Su Chan. However, he didn't want to disobey Su Chan's plea, so he could only grit his teeth and bear it. After an unknown amount of time, Su Chan finished pulling out all the bone-eating qi in her body and swallowed the Niden back into her body. Suddenly, the colorful light in the room dimmed. Li Yundong saw that the light had disappeared and was immediately overjoyed. He thought that Su Chan had finished pulling out the qi, so he turned around and asked anxiously, "What happened to you?" Before he could finish his words, he saw Su Chan looking at him in shock and fear. Her mouth opened and closed as if she wanted to say something. Li Yundong touched Su Chan's forehead with his hand in confusion. "What's wrong with you? What's the problem?" Su Chan looked frightened and subconsciously moved her body. Li Yundong followed her movements and suddenly froze on the spot. He saw a fluffy red fox tail pressing down on Su Chan's body, and he couldn't hide it no matter how hard he tried. Li Yundong stared at the fox tail in a daze, and there was a buzzing sound in his head. C/OM/. Chapter 137. Go to the internet. Why didn't she let me turn around? Why was her identity so strange? Why was she always afraid that I would dislike her? Why did Ruan Hongling say that she was a witch? Li Yundong's mind rumbled. Countless thoughts surged through his mind at this moment, and finally turned into one thought. So Su Chan is really a vixen? Why didn't I think of it? Li Yundong stared straight at the fluffy fox's tail. He opened his mouth and there were countless words in his mind that he wanted to say, but the words were stuck in his throat and he couldn't say a word. Go to the internet. 7KOM. Su Chan also stared blankly at Li Yundong. Her expression was one of horror and fear. What she had been hiding had finally been discovered. He had finally discovered that she was a wild fox. He had finally discovered that she had been hiding from him and deceiving him. Yundong. Why won't you listen to me and not look back? Su Chan looked at Li Yundong blankly, feeling as if her heart had been pricked by a needle. She summoned up her courage and said in a trembling voice, "Yundong." Li Yundong seemed to wake up from a dream and suddenly raised his head. For a moment he couldn't turn around and looked at Su Chan with a blank expression. For a moment he didn't know how to face this vixen who had been with him day and night. After all, human beings and demons were different. Li Yundong subconsciously took a step back and stammered, I. Li Yundong's bewildered expression and subconscious actions were like a cruel and sharp knife, tearing Su Chan's soft and sensitive heart into pieces. He dislikes me. Su Chan's head buzzed and went blank. Her heart seemed to be grabbed by someone and squeezed so hard that she couldn't breathe. Li Yundong's mind was in a mess. He stared at Su Chan in a daze and Su Chan stared at him in a daze. The two of them looked at each other and this familiar gaze suddenly seemed so strange. He glanced at the bloodstains on her chest and hurriedly found an excuse to hide in the bathroom. "I'll get you a towel," he said. I'll go get you a towel," he said. "I'll get you a towel." Li Yundong rushed into the bathroom and put his hands in front of the sink. It seemed that if he didn't use his strength to support himself, his body would softly sit down. This boy, who had been amazing when he was fighting with Lin Youfa before, now felt as if all his strength had been sucked away by someone. He was flustered, he was terrified, he was at a loss. He turned on the tap and let the water flow. Then, he washed his face again and again with the cold water, as if he could face this familiar stranger. What should I do? Ruan Hongling's fierce words kept echoing in his mind. Don't you know that the woman in your arms is a vixen? Aren't you afraid that she'll suck your young energy dry in the future and squeeze you dry? Don't you know that humans and demons are different? They can't coexist. Violators are against the laws of heaven. In the past, Li Yundong would have regarded such words as nonsense and scoffed at them. But when he saw Su Chan's foxtail with his own eyes, how could he not believe these things? Li Yundong pulled at his hair with all his might and kept circling in the bathroom like a sleepy beast. He kept muttering to himself, "Why didn't she tell me earlier? Why did she hide it from me? Is she really like what Ruan Hongling said? Does she want to suck my young energy dry?" Calm down. Li Yundong kept saying to himself in his mind. He patted his cheek hard, raised his head, looked at himself in the mirror on the sink and whispered to himself, "Li Yundong, don't think too much. Su Chan didn't tell you because she was worried that you would dislike her. She was afraid that you wouldn't want her anymore. Look at the internet. 7KOM. Think about it, has she ever hurt you? Has she ever despised you, a useless piece of trash? By the way, you can ask her. Su Chan will tell you." Li Yundong made up his mind. His eyes gradually became firm, and his expression became much more natural. When he walked out of the door, he took a deep breath and showed a gentle smile on his face. "Su Chan Yuk." But before Li Yundong could finish his words, he saw that the hotel was empty. The bed was empty and the room was empty. At this moment, Li Yundong's heart was also empty, as if he had lost his soul. She's gone? Li Yundong's eyes widened. His body stood there as if he had been immobilized. The smile on his face froze in an instant, and his heart fell to the bottom of a cold valley. Only when a person loses something would they know how precious it is. Suchan. Li Yundong's whole body was cold, and he suddenly realized that he had made an unforgivable mistake. She was so sensitive, so afraid that I would dislike her. Even when she was seriously injured, she didn't forget to repeat this to me, but why couldn't I think of this? Where would she go? Where could she go? The more Li Yundong thought about it, the more scared he became. He was so anxious that he didn't know what to say or do. It was as if the sky was dark at this moment. Li Yundong walked around the room in a panic and found that Su Chan hadn't taken anything with her when she left. The pink piggy bank was lying obediently in the corner of the bed, motionless. Humph, now all your money is in my hands. Uncle, you have to be obedient and listen to this little girl. The little girl seemed to be smiling sweetly in front of him, and then stupidly stuffed the key into the piggy bank. Li Yundong raised his head and tried hard not to let his tears fall, but in the haze of tears, he clearly saw the little girl holding the corner of his clothes tightly. Although she was seriously injured, she still forced a smile at him. I'm afraid that one day you will take away the piggy bank and don't want me anymore. I can still use this money to find Yuk. Li Yundong's lips trembled and his tears quickly gushed out. He murmured, the little girl won't leave me, she won't leave me. By the way, she must have gone home. Thinking of this, Li Yundong immediately rushed out of the door, out of the hotel, stopped a taxi, and went straight to his and the little girl's home. She must be here, she has nowhere to go. Li Yundong kept comforting himself, his eyes red and his heart burning with anxiety. After finally arriving at Hongqing New District, Li Yundong rushed out of the car without even paying the fare. The driver stuck his head out of the car and scolded him, but Li Yundong acted as if he didn't hear him. Li Yundong rushed into his home, opened the door and shouted, Su Chan? His voice spread out in the room, but there was no echo, only a floor full of broken glass and withered eyes. Li Yundong's heart was cold and his hands and feet couldn't help but tremble. He looked for Su Chan room by room, shouting her name loudly in every room, as if in the next second she would suddenly appear behind him like last time. Go to the internet. Then why did you talk again? Weren't you afraid of being discovered at that time? Li Yundong couldn't help but think of the little girl's voice and smile again. Because I was afraid that you would be worried about me. I saw that you couldn't find me and I was very sad, so I couldn't help but. At that time the little girl's eyes were full of tenderness and deep worry. She was afraid that he would leave her behind, so she would rather expose herself than let Li Yundong worry and be afraid. Fool, where are you? Li Yundong's eyes were full of tears. He raised his head and sighed, muttering to himself. Li Yundong stood in the spacious living room in a daze, like a frozen stone statue. He clearly remembered a stubborn girl shouting at a group of indifferent people and a Philistine landlady, Li Yundong is the best person in the world to me, and he will definitely become a great hero in the future. I won't leave him. He could still clearly remember the little girl throwing herself into his arms. She cried and swore, I believe that sooner or later, you will become a great hero. I just believe it. What Li Yundong couldn't forget was a beautiful girl pointing at him and saying confidently to a rich man, you must remember his name. His name is Li Yundong and he is my partner. Although he is a nobody now, I promise you that in less than 2 years, his name will be famous all over the world. At that time, what you can do, he can do without any effort, but what he can do, you will never be able to do. Thinking about it, Li Yundong couldn't help but burst into tears. Li Yundong, you are the most ungrateful person in the world. You even suspected that Su Chan would hurt you. She treated you like this, but you treat her like this? Has your conscience been eaten by a dog? Regret, pain, memories, and longing rushed over like a surging tide, drowning Li Yundong in an instant, making his heart ache so much that he couldn't breathe and his whole body trembled. Standing in this spacious and empty living room, the warm and bright home in the past was now cold and dim. Li Yundong kept replaying the scenes in his mind one after another. The bits and pieces of his life were like thousands of thin threads that tightly tied him together, making him finally understand one thing. Even if she was a vixen, so what? Could it be that the usual laughter, love, and sweetness were all fake? Could it be that her sincerity towards him was also fake? Su Chan, where are you? I don't care who you are, I only know that you are my girl, the girl that will never change. Come back quickly. Li Yundong suddenly shouted. His voice was emotional and sorrowful, and it spread far and wide. However, Su Chan's voice never sounded here. Li Yundong was almost desperate. He rushed out of the door crazily and ran on the street like a headless fly, shouting Su Chan's name everywhere, like a trapped beast, like a madman, and all the passers-by looked sideways. After searching for a long time, Li Yundong suddenly thought of something. He suddenly stood on the street in a daze, and his eyes suddenly became brighter and brighter. Then he suddenly broke into a run and rushed toward a place. Yes, she must be there, she must be there. Li Yundong shouted like a hysterical madman. Su Chan turned into a blue light and left the hotel. When she appeared, she found herself standing on a strange street, surrounded by surging crowds and noisy traffic. The towering buildings looked so strict and indifferent. Just now, Su Chan just wanted to escape from that place and avoid Li Yundong's eyes, but she didn't know where she was going or where she could go. Su Chan stood on the street in a daze and suddenly found that she had no one to rely on. She was alone and the world was so big but there was nowhere to go. Su Chan regretted it. She wanted to go back, but she thought of what Li Yundong had said to her before. Don't hide anything from me in the future, or I will dislike you. Su Chan couldn't help but cry. He found out that I've been lying to him. He dislikes me. He doesn't want me anymore. No one will love me in the future. Thinking of this, Su Chan couldn't help but burst into tears. She walked alone, wiping the tears that kept falling. She didn't know where she was going, so she just walked aimlessly on the street. Unconsciously, Su Chan found herself in the amusement park that she had been to with Li Yundong before. She didn't even know how the guard at the gate let her in. Seeing this familiar scene, Su Chan's tears fell harder and harder, attracting the attention of the people around her. Su Chan didn't want these people to see her cry, so she hid in the grass alone. When the crowd slowly left and there was no one around, she came out, walked alone to the huge landing gear of the space shuttle and sat down. It was late at night and the moon was bright and the stars were few. The surroundings were quiet and dark. Su Chan's petite figure sat in the seat, looking particularly lonely. Su Chan hugged the hard and cold armrest as if she was hugging Li Yundong's arm. She raised her head and stared blankly at the starry sky. The stars in the sky seemed to have turned into pictures, all of which were the details of her and Li Yundong's daily life. No one will be so good to me in the future. Su Chan's face was covered in tears. She sobbed, and a heart-wrenching pain made her feel as if the world had collapsed. Li Yundong rushed into the amusement park and headed straight for the space shuttle. His eyes were fixed on the space shuttle. The closer he got to it, the more nervous he became. He didn't dare to imagine what would happen to him if he didn't find the little girl here. What would happen to him? But when he got closer, he suddenly found a familiar figure sitting on the landing gear of the space shuttle. She was so lonely and pitiful, so lovable. It's her. It's my girl. Li Yundong felt a kind of extreme joy that almost exploded from his chest. He couldn't help but walk forward quickly. But after a few steps, Li Yundong couldn't help but stop. He walked forward slowly as if he was afraid of scaring away this sensitive and fragile girl, afraid of scaring away his beloved girl. Li Yundong quietly walked behind Su Chan and heard her murmur as she wiped her tears. Master, I miss you. I didn't mean to lie to you. Before she could finish, Li Yundong couldn't help but say, I know. I'm here. I miss you too. Su Chan's body trembled violently. She subconsciously wanted to turn her head to look at Li Yundong behind her, but she forced herself to hold back. She didn't dare. She was afraid that if she looked back, she would see the fear and disgust in his eyes again. Su Chan leaned forward slightly. She wanted to escape quickly, but her attachment and love for Li Yundong wrapped around her tightly like a vine, making her dare not run away. The little girl was both surprised and happy. Her whole body trembled like a frightened little sheep. Li Yundong stood behind Su Chan. He didn't dare to reach out and hug her for fear of scaring away the panicked girl. He said in a slightly trembling voice, Don't run, girl. Listen to me. I don't dislike you really. Do you still remember what I told you? No matter what, you are my girl. Have you forgotten? Su Chan trembled and turned her face to him. Her delicate face was full of sparkling tears. She said in a trembling voice, You really don't dislike me? I can only cause trouble for you. I can't help you with anything. I'm also a vixen hated by everyone in the cultivation world. You don't dislike me? Li Yundong nodded vigorously. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he said with a smile, Am I not also a good-for-nothing college student with no money and no car? You see, I can't give you anything. I can't buy you clothes even if you want to. But you don't dislike me, do you? Su Chan stared at Li Yundong with tears in her eyes, and her lips trembled slightly. Li Yundong wiped his tears and continued to say with a smile, "Didn't you say that you would accompany me and watch me become a great person? How could you forget? It doesn't matter whether you are a vixen or not. What matters is that I like you. Do you like me?" Su Chan couldn't hold it in anymore. She threw herself into Li Yundong's arms and hugged his waist tightly with both hands. With a loud cry, she cried so hard that it was as if her heart and lungs were being torn apart. "Master, please don't despise me. I'll be a good girl," she cried. Li Yundong's heart was full of bitterness and sweetness. He held back his tears and stroked the little girl's hair as he said, "No, I won't despise you." After that, he hugged Su Chan tightly, as if he was afraid that she would disappear in the next second. The most painful thing in the world was that you didn't know how to cherish some precious things until you lost them. And the most wonderful thing in the world was that when you lost such a precious thing, when you were in pain and despair, it came back to you and you got it back. Li Yundong held Su Chan in his arms and felt that the world had suddenly become so wide again, and the starry sky had become so clear again. It seemed that with her, he had everything, the whole world. The next second, the end of the world would come, and there was nothing to be afraid of. When I went home tonight, I found that I couldn't get on the internet, and there was no sound at all from the phone at home. I called 10000 and said that someone would be sent to repair it. I waited until 10:30 but no one came. I had to take the USB flash drive to the internet cafe to update it. It was a little late. Sorry everyone. Although it was the second watch today, it was really a long chapter with more than 9,000 words, the same amount as the usual third watch. Tomorrow is Saturday and it's still the third watch. /om/. Chapter 138. Go to WatchNet. Li Yundong and Su Chan had no idea how long they cuddled and hugged each other until the moon was covered by the clouds, as if they were too embarrassed to look at the lovey-dovey couple any longer. WatchNet. 7K0, Hong, OM. The little girl gradually got tired of crying. She sobbed from time to time. She wiped her tears and hummed, "Why did you think of looking for me here?" Li Yundong wiped the girl's tears with a smile and said, "Haven't you heard of this saying?" The little girl cried so hard that her nose was stuffy. She said in a nasal voice, "What are you talking about?" Li Yunyang said with a smile, "I don't have the flying wings of the colorful phoenix, but my heart is connected." The little girl burst out laughing. "Who has a telepathic connection with you? You're so annoying." Li Yundong chuckled. He stretched out his sleeve and handed it to the little girl. "Hurry up and wipe your nose. You've got snot bubbles coming out." Su Chan said angrily, "You're the one who has snot bubbles coming out of your nose. You're so annoying." "I'm not." But as she said this, she grabbed Li Yundong's sleeve and wiped her face like a cat washing its face. Su Chan let go of Li Yundong's arm in satisfaction. She looked up and saw Li Yundong smiling at her. She couldn't help but blush. "What are you looking at? Don't laugh at me." Li Yundong smiled and said, "Okay, I won't laugh at you. But come closer and I'll tell you a secret," in a low voice. Su Chan leaned over curiously and whispered, "What secret?" Li Yundong said in a low voice, "Actually, you wiped your snot all over your face just now." Su Chan turned pale with fright and shouted, "Ah? It can't be, right? What are you going to do about it?" With that, she buried her face in her hands and buried her head in Li Yundong's arms. Li Yundong burst out laughing. "I was just kidding." As he spoke, he stretched out his hand to pull the little lass up, but the little lass covered her face and refused to lift her head. After Li Yundong tried to persuade her, the little girl wiped it repeatedly with her hand. Then she raised her head with a flushed face and asked nervously, "Is there anything else? Will it become ugly?" Li Yundong smiled and pinched the girl's cheek. "Silly, I told you I was lying to you. Watch net. 7KOM. Net. Super_speed. More. No." Su Chan couldn't help but say angrily, "You're so annoying. You're so naughty. I don't want to talk to you anymore." How could Li Yundong allow the little girl to escape from his grasp? He quickly hugged the little girl and pulled her into his arms. He held her tightly with both hands and said, "Where are you going?" Su Chan giggled and held Li Yundong's arm tightly with both hands. Her heart was warm, full. She felt very warm and safe. Under the moonlight, Li Yundong saw that the girl had bright eyes and white teeth. Her eyes were like water, and she was indescribably bright and lovely. He couldn't help but lower his head and kiss her gently on her rosy lips. Su Chan's body trembled and she unconsciously softened. She raised her head and stared at Li Yundong, murmuring, "Yundong, aren't you afraid that I'm a vixen?" Li Yundong laughed. "Don't you know that I like little vixens like you?" As he said this, he reached out to touch the little girl's breasts. "Where are you hiding your tail? Let me see." The most sensitive part of Su Chan's body was at the pubic bone. When Li Yundong's fingers touched her, her whole body suddenly trembled as if she had been electrocuted. She said in a trembling voice, "Don't touch there." Li Yundong stopped and said with a smile, "I won't touch it if you tell me where you're hiding your tail." Su Chan moaned and hid her head in Li Yundong's arms. She said in a low, muffled voice, "I won't tell you." Li Yundong smiled and reached out to touch the little girl's pubic bone. The little girl was so scared that she hurriedly begged for mercy. I'll tell you." Su Chan blushed and said, "Only after I spit out the Niden and my spiritual energy is greatly reduced will I show my true form. Now I can't see it, let alone touch it." Li Yundong was a little disappointed. He held the little girl in his arms and sat on the lift platform of the space shuttle, saying, "I was wondering why you didn't let me turn my head at that time." Su Chan couldn't help but say angrily, "I told you not to look back, but you did." Li Yundong smiled embarrassedly and said, "I thought you were done. However, you shouldn't have hidden this from me." Su Chan pouted and said, "I was afraid that you would dislike me." As she spoke, she suddenly thought of something and her expression became timid. She pulled at Li Yundong's clothes with her fingers and said weakly, "Yundong, there's one more thing I haven't told you." Li Yundong's face darkened and he pretended to be angry. "Good girl, you're still hiding something from me. Tell me, confess, and I'll be lenient. Resist and you'll be severely punished." Su Chan said timidly, "When you swallowed my Renyuan Jindan, I did want to squeeze you dry." Li Yundong was stunned and stared at Su Chan with his eyes wide open. "Are you serious?" Su Chan shrunk her head and nodded, as if she knew that she had done something wrong. "Go to CNET. Hunjoim." Li Yundong couldn't help but ask, "So you don't want to do it now?" Su Chan nodded quickly. Yes. What? Li Yundong said with a smile. Su Chan held Li Yundong's arm and counted the good things that Li Yundong had done for her in the past. She said, "You treated me so well later, so of course I couldn't bear to do it." You're so lucky. My Renyuan Jindan was given to you for free. Do you know how many people want this Renyuan Jindan?" Li Yundong couldn't help but chuckle. He pressed his forehead against the girl's. "You idiot," he said. "I'm really lucky because I have you." Su Chan was happy and touched to hear that. She couldn't help but look at Li Yundong with more and more infatuated eyes. Su Chan's cheeks were flushed and her nostrils flared. "Yundong, kiss me," she said passionately. Li Yundong cupped the girl's cheeks with both hands and kissed her deeply. The kiss was like a bolt of lightning that ignited the fire of the earth. The two of them immediately tangled their tongues. The two of them kissed for a long time until they were both out of breath. Only then did they separate, panting. "My mouth is numb," Su Chan said with a giggle. Li Yundong also laughed. "My tongue is numb from your sucking." Su Chan's cheeks turned crimson. She rushed over and covered Li Yundong's mouth. "You're not allowed to say it." Li Yundong laughed and dodged. "There's no one here. What are you afraid of?" Su Chan giggled and said, "No means no." Li Yundong was aroused by the girl's natural charm. He couldn't help but reach out to take her hand and then touch it under his lower abdomen. He said in a low voice, "Girl, you've aroused the fire of your master. What do you think I should do?" When Su Chan's hand touched the hot and hard thing, she was so scared that she suddenly retracted her hand. Her whole body melted into Li Yundong's arms like a pool of spring water. She whimpered, "Yundong, I can't do it now." Li Yundong smiled bitterly. "When can I do it?" Su Chan's cheeks were so red that they seemed to be dripping blood. She said in a low voice, "You have to wait until you reach the Zhuji phase." Li Yundong let out a long sigh and said painfully, "Why do I have to wait until I reach the Zhuji phase?" Su Chan gently stroked Li Yundong's chest with her hand, helping him smooth out the qi in his chest and slowly calming down the rising desire in his body. Because only after you reach the Zhuji phase will the essence qi in your body be stable. Only then will the Yuanyang qi in your body not be seduced by my yin qi when we have sex, and then it will flow out of control. Li Yundong was stunned. "No way? Then how can I reach the Zhuji phase? What about the Zhuji phase?" Su Chan explained, "The Yellow Emperor's canon of internal medicine divides human cultivation into several stages. namely the child body, the leakage body, the broken body, the weak body, and the weak body. Although Li Yundong was only one threshold away from the Zhuji phase, he was completely clueless when it came to the cultivation theory. He said with a blank face, "What do you mean? Explain?" Su Chan explained with a smile. The Yellow Emperor's canon of internal medicine states that before the age of 16 for men and before the age of 14 for women, both men and women have not reached the Tiangui phase. Therefore people have a child body. At this time they don't need to reach the Zhuji phase to directly practice magic and magic. Li Yundong couldn't help but interrupt. "You don't mean the Tiangui phase of men and the menstruation phase of women, do you?" The little girl nodded, blushing. Li Yundong couldn't help laughing. "No way. Nowadays, how can people reach the Tiangui phase at the age of 16 or 14? Nowadays children are becoming more and more precocious." Su Chan sighed and said, "That's why there are fewer and fewer cultivators nowadays. Once the inner disciples of orthodox cultivation sects are born, they must be taken away and specially raised. They must not let the food of the secular world make them mature prematurely, thus destroying their child body." Li Yundong nodded in understanding. "So that's how it is. I understand. Go on." Su Chan said, "Like you who have reached the Tiangui phase after the age of 16, but still have a child body is called a missing body. At this time you must first restore the missing body, and then you can reach the Zhuji phase. If you have sex with me now, it will be a missing body, also known as a broken body. At this time it will take twice the effort for half the result to cultivate. You must first consolidate the blood essence and make up the missing body, and then you can reach the Zhuji phase." Li Yundong said, "I see. What about the weak body and the weak body?" Su Chan said, "When a man is 56 years old and a woman is 42 years old, a man is 64 years old and a woman is 49 years old. If you want to cultivate at this time, you have to spend 12 times the effort. First, you have to steal the essence of heaven and earth to make up for the already weak body, then you have to accumulate energy and enhance your vitality. Then, you have to consolidate the blood essence and make up the missing body. Then, you have to build the foundation and restore your child body. Finally, you can cultivate." Li Yundong suddenly understood. "I was wondering why those who achieved the Tao in ancient times all had white hair and a youthful face. It turns out that they have all been restored to a child's body?" Su Chan nodded and said, "Once you succeed in the Zhuji phase, the essence qi in your body will be as stable as Mount Tai. From then on, you will not be disturbed by the outside world, and there will be no loss of semen or menstruation. From then on, the human body will be a complete small universe. There will no longer be any loopholes and no essence qi will leak out." Li Yundong said impatiently, "Then what are you waiting for? I'll go to the Zhuji phase now." Su Chan laughed and scolded, "You pervert. Not now. The Zhuji phase is the most important thing for cultivators. There are only 2 opportunities in life. Once you miss them, there will be no hope for you to cultivate for the rest of your life." Li Yundong stared blankly and said, What do you mean by that? If I fail in the Zhuji phase twice, I won't be able to do it with you for the rest of my life, right?" Su Chan covered her mouth and giggled. "Yes, otherwise you will die from excessive semen." Li Yundong's face was full of heroic spirit, and he said righteously, "I'm willing to die for you." Su Chan stamped her feet and said angrily, "Bah, don't talk nonsense. We both have to be good. In the future we will travel all over the world together." Li Yundong laughed and said, "Okay. After saying so much I can only say one thing. As long as we reach the Zhuji phase we can do it, right?" Su Chan's face had not been red for a long time, but at this time, it suddenly turned red again. She giggled and said coquettishly, "You hooligan, you only know how to do bad things." Li Yundong laughed evilly. He held Su Chan in his arms and waved his hand heroically. "Well, for the happiness of my girl, I want it. Zhuji. Zhuji. /om/. Chapter 139. Go to Watch Network. Li Yundong shouted and his voice spread in all directions. Su Chan was so scared that she looked around and said angrily, "How can you shout this kind of thing everywhere?" Li Yundong said with a smirk, "Do you mean the first half or the second half?" Su Chan's cheeks turned red. She giggled and said, "Bad guy, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I want to go back." Li Yundong pulled Su Chan and refused to go. "Don't be in such a hurry. Tell me how to build the Zhuji phase first." Su Chan looked back and smiled. She bit her lip and looked charming. She smiled shyly and teasingly. How can I teach you to build the Zhuji phase if I don't go back? Li Yundong was greatly tempted by the little girl's seduction. He laughed and couldn't wait to take the little girl's hand, saying, well, there's no time to lose. Let's go back now. But Li Yundong suddenly remembered something. He smiled bitterly and said, oh no? Su Chan looked at him in confusion. What's wrong? Li Yundong rummaged through his trouser pocket and said with a wry smile, I don't have a penny on me. How can I go back? Do I have to walk back? Su Chan giggled. You're so stupid, she said, shaking like a flower. Li Yundong pretended to be angry and said, how dare you laugh at me? I think your butt is itchy. Su Chan smiled and said, I can fly you back. Li Yundong was surprised and delighted. You can fly. By the way, you must be able to fly. Otherwise, how could you disappear from the room out of thin air? Can you take me with you? Su Chan said proudly, of course. After that, she raised her head and raised her nose to the sky, looking insufferably arrogant. However, she kept secretly watching Li Yundong from the corner of her eyes. Her eyes were rolling and her expression seemed to be saying, come and praise me, come and praise me. Li Yunyang was very sensible and made a gesture of worship. Great immortal Su, quickly show your magic power and take us ignorant people to broaden our horizons. Su Chan was amused by Li Yundong's exaggerated movements and expression. You're so annoying. How can I call you great immortal? Li Yundong saw that his flattery had failed, so he quickly said with a flattering smile, what about Xiaoxian? Su Chan smiled and said, neither is Xiaoxian. Li Yundong smiled again and said, then Fox Fairy? She could finally talk about her identity and sect with him openly and honestly. She was in a good mood, and her whole body felt comfortable, as if she had just drunk a fine wine. She felt completely at ease as if she had just drunk a fine wine. Watch net. 7KOM. Watch net. 7KO, Hong, so it turns out that talking to the person you like without reservation is such a pleasant thing? Su Chan's heart was filled with sweetness, and her smile was also sweet. Her eyes seemed to contain honey. Since the establishment of our Fox Zen school in the period of Emperor Xianzong of the Tang dynasty, there have only been two people who can be called immortals. One is the founder, Ancestor Rock, and the other is the fourth-generation leader, Mystical Silver Fox. Both of them have cultivated to the highest realm of the Fox Zen school and become real fox immortals. The others are all fox demons. Su Chan played with her braids, her eyes rolling in her sockets. She tilted her head and pursed her lips. As she thought, she said, my master said that if I didn't have a chance, it would be difficult for me to cultivate to the realm of the six-tailed spiritual fox, let alone the highest realm of the seven-tailed divine fox, the eight-tailed earth fox, and the nine-tailed celestial fox. Li Yundong asked curiously, the more tails you have, the more powerful you are? Su Chan nodded and said, 9 is the largest number in the world and it also represents the highest realm such as Jiuqian, 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 Jiuqian and so on. There are also 9 levels of heaven in cultivation. It's the same for us. When we cultivate to the 9-tailed celestial fox, we will reach the peak. From then on, we can be ranked among the immortals and look down on the world. At this point, Su Chan suddenly pouted and said, if you hadn't stolen my Rinyuan Jin Dan, maybe I would have been a 6-tailed spiritual fox by now. I'm so stupid, so I definitely won't be able to cultivate to the 6-tailed spiritual fox in the future. Li Yundong took Su Chan's hand and asked tentatively, didn't you say that collecting yang to nourish yin can also improve your cultivation? As he said this, Li Yundong patted his chest with a calm and righteous expression on his face. I will risk my life to accompany lady. Girl, come and pick me. If I frown, you are not a man. Su Chan laughed so hard that she was rocking back and forth. I'm not a real man. Li Yundong laughed and said, yes, yes. You are a free little itinerant immortal in the world. Su Chan giggled and looked at Li Yundong with a softer and more infatuated gaze. She clasped Li Yundong's fingers tightly and smiled sweetly. Yundong, I am so happy. Go to the internet. Li Yundong laughed and said, what are you so happy about? You are happy that I stole your Rinyuan Jin Dan, or that you can collect yang to nourishing later? She smiled and fell into his arms. She pressed her face against his warm and broad chest, listening to his strong heartbeat. Yundong, although I don't have the Rinyuan Jin Dan, I have you by my side, she said in a sweet voice. Yundong, although I don't have the Rinyuan Jin Dan anymore, I have you by my side. Although the Rinyuan Jin Dan can make me a 6-tailed fox spirit, with you by my side, I feel that even if I become a 3-tailed fox spirit with little demon power in the future, I will still be very happy. These infatuated words made Li Yundong's heart ripple. He hugged the little girl tightly and said with a smile, "Let's cultivate together in the future. I will help you become a nine-tailed celestial fox, and you will help me become the #1 master in the world. The two of us will be partners in Jianghu, laugh at the world and be a pair of immortal lovers. It is only we who bully others and no one else who bullies us." Su Chan listened and was fascinated. "I really look forward to that day. However, I am too stupid. I will definitely not be able to become a nine-tailed celestial fox. But Yundong, you have the best temperament, the best talent, and the best opportunity. I think you will definitely be a famous cultivator in the cultivation world in the future." As Su Chan spoke, her little nose wrinkled cutely and she giggled proudly. "When the time comes, others will know that my Taoist companion is the famous Li Yundong when they see me. Hee hee, let's see who dares to bully me then." Li Yundong raised his head and laughed. "The famous Li Yundong doesn't even know how to fly now. I say, after talking so much here, it's time to go back to the Zhuji phase, right? Great Immortal Su, please hurry up and use your magical powers." Su Chan straightened up, covered Li Yundong's eyes with her hands and said, "Then close your eyes." Li Yundong asked curiously, "Why do I close my eyes?" Su Chan said, "When people close their eyes, the liver will slow down the process of filtering and storing blood. The metabolism of the human body will slow down, and the blood qi will also run slower, so the qi in the body will rise. In this case, it will be much easier for me to fly with you. If you open your eyes and see something high in the sky, I'm afraid that your heart and meridians will immediately be in disorder, causing the turbid qi in your body to sink, increasing the burden of my flight, and even causing both of us to fall from the sky." Li Yundong said in surprise, "I don't have acrophobia. What's there to be afraid of?" Su Chan said with a serious expression, "There are 3 kinds of great horror in cultivation, which are the common demons of cultivators. The first is the great horror between life and death, the second is the great horror between heaven and earth, and the third is the great horror between reality and illusion. In the future, when your spiritual power is enough, you can learn to fly on magic tools, and then you will know what the great horror between heaven and earth is." Seeing that Su Chan was serious, Li Yundong couldn't help but look solemn. He closed his eyes honestly and said, "Don't worry, I definitely won't open my eyes this time." Su Chan was a little worried and said, "You must not open your eyes. Otherwise you will fall to your death." Li Yundong nodded hard and closed his eyes even more tightly. "I won't open them." After saying that, he suddenly felt his body become light, and his body floated up as light as a feather. Then the wind whistled past his ears, and he felt as if he was sitting in a 200 km/h convertible sports car. Even the skin on his face was aching from the strong wind. Li Yundong opened his mouth to speak, but as soon as he opened his mouth, he felt a strong wind rushing in and forcibly swallowing his words. Li Yundong was shocked, and suddenly his heart began to beat wildly. This didn't matter, but the qi in his body suddenly sank, making his body become heavy. In the blink of an eye, Li Yundong felt his body fall violently. This violent sense of weightlessness made him feel as if he had stepped into the gate of hell, and his heart seemed to jump into his throat in an instant. Su Chan shouted in shock and fear, "Yundong, take a deep breath and put your tongue on the roof of your mouth. Don't let your imagination run wild. We will fall to our death like this." Li Yundong immediately took a deep breath, put his tongue on the roof of his mouth, and tried to empty his mind, not thinking about the surrounding environment and the terrible feeling of falling. Soon he felt his body shake and stopped falling in an instant. After a while, his feet suddenly sank as if he had stepped on something solid. He heard Su Chan's frightened voice. "Okay, you can open your eyes now." Li Yundong opened his eyes and found himself in an inconspicuous street corner not far from the hotel. Beside him, Su Chan's face was ashen, and she kept patting her chest. "What happened just now?" Li Yundong took a deep breath, and his heart slowly fell back into his chest. Su Chan said angrily, "Why did you have to speak?" Li Yundong looked at Li Yundong helplessly and said, "You didn't say that I couldn't speak." Su Chan looked at Li Yundong helplessly and said, "So you're blaming me?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "Forget it. First time, second time. I'll know in the future. Besides, you should hurry up and teach me the Zhuji phase. When I succeed in the Zhuji phase and learn to fly, I won't have to be so scared anymore, right?" Su Chan thought for a moment, then smiled and said, "That's true. Well, let's go back quickly." Li Yundong suddenly thought of something and asked, "By the way, didn't you say that you want to fly? What kind of magic item do you use to fly?" Su Chan's cheeks suddenly turned red. She was too embarrassed to answer Li Yundong's question, so she just took his arm with both hands and urged him, "Hurry up and go back to the Zhuji phase." Li Yundong laughed and pinched the girl's cheek with his hand. "You're even more anxious than I am. TSK, little pervert." Su Chan smiled and said angrily, "Bah, you're the pervert. You only know how to do bad things after you finish the Zhuji phase." Although her words were accusatory, the corners of her eyes were full of the natural seductiveness of a little girl. She was secretly sending him glances, which made his heart beat faster. Li Yundong was tempted. He couldn't wait to succeed in the Zhuji phase immediately and then have a good relationship with this little girl. There were as many cultivators in the world as there were carps in the river, but Li Yundong was probably the only one in the world who had reached the Zhuji phase in the name of pushing down. /om/ Chapter 141. Go to watch net. After finishing the preparation work before the Zhuji phase, Li Yundong took a deep breath, closed his eyes slightly, put his tongue on the upper jaw and gradually emptied his mind. Gradually he felt a wave of heat rolling up from his waist, then to his dantian, then to his perineum across the Magpie Bridge, to his Naiwan, and finally along the 8 extrameridians to the Baihui acupoint on the top of his head. Go to watch net. 7 KOM. Literature. At this time, Li Yundong only felt warm all over, and the thoughts in his mind gradually disappeared. Beside his ear, Su Chan softly recited Lu Dongbin's poem. Concentrate and adjust your breath. Listen to the true breath through your 5 senses and 7 apertures. Listening to the breath is the most important. The human heart and Taoist heart are interdependent. When the mortal breath stops, the true breath rises unconsciously. When the true breath stops, the mortal breath rises, and the breath returns to the root and enters the lower field. The universe of oneself has heaven and earth, and the heart is higher than the sky and the kidney is higher than the earth. Exhale into the Tianyuan root, and inhale into the Tianyuan root. It is the truth of breath regulation that the true heart and true breath are always interdependent, and the spirit and qi are interdependent. Li Yundong heard it clearly. Although he didn't understand what this cultivation poem meant for a while, when his mind gradually emptied, his qi unconsciously ran according to the principles of this poem. Su Chan carefully looked at Li Yundong's eyelids. When people closed their eyes, apart from sleeping, as long as they were thinking, their eyeballs would always roll by themselves unconsciously. When Su Chan found that the eyeballs under Li Yundong's eyelids were no longer rolling, she knew that Li Yundong had entered a meditative state of silence. In this state, as soon as a person's thoughts were interrupted, the true God in his body would immediately appear automatically. This was what the cultivation poem said. When the divine sense is broken, the true God is born, and the true God is born to refine the primordial spirit. After Li Yundong entered a deep state of meditation, he found that he was once again in the spirit space he had created. He had transformed into an immovable wisdom king with 3 heads and 6 arms who could hold up the sky and earth. The last time Li Yundong controlled this true God with boundless divine power, he almost entered the realm of Mahasvara and was unable to extricate himself. This time, he was prepared in his heart, and it was difficult for his mind to be shocked by the boundless divine power in his body. Go to watch net. Li Yunyang tried to raise his hand. With a bang, countless dark clouds quickly rolled in the distant sky, and thunder rumbled. He waved his hand again, and with a crack, countless bolts of heavenly thunder fell from the sky. The earth seemed to be facing a lightning catastrophe, and every inch of land was being violently bombarded. As for Li Yundong, he stood between heaven and earth, motionless. Even though there were thousands of thunderbolts around him, none of them struck him. He was like a majestic king standing on the battlefield, surrounded by soldiers who were rushing forward like a tide, but none of them dared to collide with him. Looking at the destructive scene around him, Li Yunyang couldn't help but sigh in his heart. I wonder when I can cultivate such a magical power in the real world? But as soon as this thought flashed through his mind, he suddenly found that the whole spirit space had suddenly changed. He was no longer standing between heaven and earth, but in an ordinary world. Li Yundong saw He Shao standing there, pointing at his nose and cursing. His voice was extremely unpleasant. Who do you think you are? An uncultured little bastard wants to steal my woman? Little bastard, let me tell you, Zhou Qin is my woman. If you dare to touch a hair on her, I will kill you immediately. Kill me? I'd like to see who will kill who. Li Yundong suddenly flew into a rage. He raised his hand and countless heavenly thunder fell from the sky. In the blink of an eye, He Xiao's body and soul were destroyed. But then Lu Chuan, Wu Hui and the others who had once had a grudge with him jumped out one after another and cursed, "You can kill him, but can you kill everyone in the world? Could it be that he was wrong? You are just a good-for-nothing. How can you be worthy of the woman beside you?" Li Yundong was furious. His anger was so great that heaven and earth were trembling. His whole body was surrounded by terrible blue light and thunder chi, like an angry god. "Do you all want to die?" Just as Li Yundong was about to lose his temper, he saw Zhou Qin appear beside him and persuade him bitterly, "Li Yundong, stop. Killing is against the law." At this time, Li Yundong only felt that the world was under his control. There was no one in the world who could defeat him, and there was nothing that could threaten him. He laughed and said, "Against the law?" As he said this, Li Yundong pointed to the top of his head and then to the bottom of his feet, shouting, "The sky was born because of me and the earth rose because of me. I want all living things to prosper and grow so that they can have life. If I want the world to perish and disappear, they will be destroyed and die in an instant. Tell me, what is the use of this method?" After that, Li Yundong was about to use the method to kill Lu Chuan, Wu Hui and the others, but at this time Feng Na, Ching Cheng, Chao Kefi and the others all appeared. They begged bitterly, "Even if He Xiao deserves to die, these people don't. Please let them go." But at this time Lu Chuan, Wu Hui, and the others were still unrepentant, cursing loudly. "Go to the internet." 7 KOM. Li Yundong laughed angrily. "You people are all good people in vain. Look at them. Have they ever repented at all? People like them are better off dead." After that, Li Yundong was about to use the method to kill Lu Chuan, Wu Hui and the others, but at this time Su Chan appeared. Su Chan looked at Li Yundong with a sad look on her face. "Yundong, don't," she begged softly. "This is the devil of slaughter in your body. Don't let it control you. You'll go crazy if you do." As soon as Li Yundong saw Su Chan, his anger immediately dissipated. The flashing lightning around his body also gradually disappeared. He stared at Su Chan in a daze and said with a hint of anger, "You're also trying to persuade me?" Su Chan slowly walked up to Li Yundong and fixed her eyes on him. "I'm not trying to persuade you," she said softly. "Have you forgotten our agreement? If you go crazy, then you won't be able to build the foundation. If you can't build the foundation, then how can we fly together?" Su Chan couldn't help but blush as she said this. Her expression was one of bashfulness and anticipation. Li Yundong's anger vanished in an instant. As soon as the anger in his heart dissipated, he found himself waking up from his meditation. He was still in the small hotel and Su Chan was staring at him in surprise. "You succeeded in building the foundation, sir," she shouted. "I succeeded?" Li Yundong exclaimed. "No way. So easy? So fast?" Su Chan nodded vigorously, a smile blossoming on her face. She wrapped her arms around Li Yundong's neck and said, "Of course. My sir is a genius that only appears once every 500 years. Li Yundong laughed heartily. The beauty in front of him smelled like orchids, and the smile on her jade-like face was full of admiration. How could he not be proud of himself? Li Yundong also wrapped his arms around Su Chan's waist. "Then can we do that now?" he asked with a sly smile. Su Chan's cheeks were red and she giggled. "Naughty boy. You just succeeded in building the foundation and you want to play tricks on me." "No." Then she tried to run away. How could Li Yundong allow her to escape? He quickly held her with both hands, lowered his head and kissed the little girl's lips. As soon as the little girl was kissed, her body softly fell down and she collapsed into his arms as if she had no bones. Her nose let out a moan that was as sweet as honey. Li Yundong had been looking forward to this day for a long time. As soon as he heard the voice, he felt his whole body heat up. He reached out his hand to the girl's chest and slowly pressed her soft body down on the bed. For a moment, the two of them were entangled and turned red. Li Yundong was sprinting in this kind of erotic gentleness. The beauty under him was panting. He was intoxicated and didn't know that he had already gone crazy. What was the horror between reality and illusion? The horror was that when you thought you were in an illusion, in fact, you were in the real world. But when you thought you had returned to the real world, in fact, you were still in your own illusion. After Li Yundong entered the Zhuji phase, 2 days had passed in the outside world while he had been in the spirit space. Relying on Su Chan's influence on him, Li Yundong had defeated his Zizai Tianma, but at the same time he had fallen into his love for Su Chan and his yearning for sex. A person's desires were like a net, layer after layer, interlocking with each other. When one desire was extinguished, another would rise up and attack stealthily, causing one to be unable to guard against it. Li Yundong was in the Zhuji phase for the first time, so he didn't know the great horror between reality and illusion. Moreover, before he had entered meditation, he had been seduced by Su Chan and let his imagination run wild, leaving behind the root of inner demons. At this time he thought that he had succeeded in the Zhuji phase and was making love with Su Chan, but in fact in the real world, Su Chan was so scared by Li Yundong that she was sweating. At this time, Li Yundong's human nature rose uncontrollably in his divine sense, and even the blood in his body flowed faster. The most terrible thing was that the thing on Li Yundong's waist was stimulated by the desire. It rose high and the blood in his body was rushing there crazily. Su Chan knew that Li Yundong must have been controlled by the inner demons at this time, and the qi in his body was not flowing normally. Moreover, she saw the thing below Li Yundong jumping with the surging blood. She was even more frightened and her face was pale, for fear that Li Yundong would erupt in the next second. When a person was in the Zhuji phase, it was the process of mobilizing all the qi in the body to compress and refine it into the Niden. At this time the human body was like a pressure cooker, when the qi was boiling and had nowhere to vent. If Li Yundong opened his qi at this time, then his leakless body would immediately be broken. This was equivalent to a flood that had found a vent in an instant, and it would surge out in an instant. Even the precious Jindan's qi in Li Yundong's body would be lost along with the essence qi in his body. Su Chan was burning with anxiety. She knew that outsiders could not disturb the Zhuji phase, let alone help them. Otherwise, even the person who helped them might fall into the inner demons and be unable to extricate themselves. But now that Li Yundong was about to fall, Su Chan couldn't care so much. She fiercely clenched her teeth, pressed one hand on the Baihui acupoint on the top of Li Yundong's head, and poked his Lingtai acupoint with her index finger with the other hand. In traditional Chinese medicine, there was a method called bloodletting. When the qi in a person's body was too strong and inflated, they would use a needle to prick the person's finger and release the qi in the body through this method. Su Chan poked the Lingtai acupoint with her finger, and it was as if she was poking a finger to let out blood. As she poked the Lingtai acupoint with her finger, the surging qi in Li Yundong's body immediately found an opening. Su Chan poked the Lingtai acupoint to release the qi, and at the same time she poured her own yin qi into Li Yundong's body through the Baihui acupoint on the top of Li Yundong's head, using this to calm the crazily flowing yuanyang qi in his body. But she hadn't expected that the yuanyang qi in Li Yundong's body would be far stronger than she had expected. As soon as she poured her yin qi into Li Yundong's body, a powerful yuanyang qi immediately counterattacked. This counterattack was so fierce that it invaded Su Chan's body in the blink of an eye, making her feel the bone-deep desire that Li Yundong had sunk into the sea of desire. Su Chan was unable to move under the impact of the powerful qi in Li Yundong's body. Her expression was one of pain and fear, and a trace of despair flashed through her mind. It's over, we're both finished. How could this be? /om/. Chapter 142. Go to the net. Early in the morning, Shen Hui, who was on summer vacation, was bored, so she went to the Dongxing building to play with her cousin. However, as soon as she entered Yin Mingfan's office, she found that Yin Mingfan was on the phone. After hanging up the phone, she picked up the car key and was about to go out. Go to the internet. 7 km. Literature, Shen Hui said with a smile. Cousin, where are you going? Yin Mingfan smiled and said, I'm going out to find someone. Are you so free during the summer vacation? Doesn't uncle care about you? Shen Hui curled her lips and snorted. He can't even deal with his concubines. How can he have time to care about me? Yin Mingfan raised her hand and made a gesture of wanting to hit her. She pretended to be angry and said, a son doesn't talk about his father's fault. How can you talk about your father like that? Shen Hui was frightened by her gesture and jumped back. She made a face and said angrily, that's right. Isn't the old master just a rich man? He brought so many women home and made himself look like a feudal landlord. Bah, it's disgusting. That's why I don't like him. Seeing that she couldn't control Shen Hui, Yin Mingfan shook her head helplessly and sighed. Alas, Uncle Shen is good at everything, but he's too romantic. I really don't know what his family will produce in 100 years. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but think of the descendants of the Shen family who were eyeing her uncle's property covetously. She sighed in her heart. Yin Mingfan was silent for a while. She suddenly thought of something and raised her head. By the way, I'm going out now. You play here first. I'll be back later. Seeing that she was going out, Shin Hui rolled her eyes and hugged her arm in a flattering manner. Don't be like that, cousin. Take me with you. I'm bored. Yin Mingfan knew that Shin Hui was the daughter of the Shin family and the apple of her uncle's eye. He loved her like a treasure and no one could do anything to her. That was why she had developed a devil's character. If she didn't follow her temper, she was afraid that she would cause a ruckus here. Moreover, with her status, who could control her? Who would dare to? Yin Mingfan smiled helplessly and said, I heard that your stepmother signed you up for piano, calligraphy, painting, and dance classes. There are so many classes, but you don't need to go to any of them. Why do you have to come here and behave so atrociously? A look of contempt and disdain appeared on Shin Hui's face. She sneered and said, Her? She just wanted to gild her precious son's reputation, and conveniently bring me along to curry favor with the old man in the family. This woman had given birth to a beautiful son, and now her ass was so high up in the sky. She walked like a crab as if she wanted to occupy the entire road by herself. Fortunately, the old master is still alive. Shin Hui giggled and said, I'm thick-skinned. Cousin, you're not angry anymore. Yin Mingfan shook her head helplessly. She wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes with a tissue and said angrily, You're so annoying. You made me angry as soon as you came here. My makeup is all ruined. Shin Hui shook Yin Mingfan's arm and said coquettishly, Cousin, you're a natural beauty. Don't be afraid. Yin Mingfan stood up and said with a wry smile, Forget it, I'm afraid of you. Let's go. It wasn't easy for me to find out Li Yundong's whereabouts from Zhou Qin. Zhou Qin is waiting for me at school. Don't let her wait too long. Go watch the net. Shin Hui pouted and said, There are so many capable people in the world. Why do you have to look for him? I don't believe that he has any real talent. Yin Mingfan quickly touched up her makeup and said, Didn't you see it with your own eyes that day? Isn't it true? Shin Hui tilted her head and snorted coldly. He must be a blind cat running into a dead mouse. Or he colluded with that Tsichao Kefi. Yin Mingfan was furious. How can you talk about people like that? Then you don't have to go. Stay here or go wherever you want. Shin Hui was shocked and quickly put on a pitiful look. I know. I'll be good later, okay? However, her eyes were rolling in her eyes, and she was secretly thinking about how to embarrass Li Yundong later. Yin Mingfan had no time to guess what she was thinking. She took the car key and rushed to the underground parking lot with Shin Hui, then drove to Tiannan University. 20 minutes later, Yin Mingfan parked an Audi A6 at the school gate. She lowered the window and saw that Zhou Qin was standing at the school gate with a book in her arms, talking to two girls. Zhou Qin. Yin Mingfan stuck her head out of the window and waved her hand. Zhou Qin followed the voice and looked over, then nodded at her. She turned her head and said something to the two girls beside her. Then the three girls walked over together. President Yin? Zhou Qin approached and greeted her with a smile. Yin Mingfan also got out of the car and looked at the two girls beside Zhou Qin curiously. Zhou Qin smiled faintly and said, I went to Li Yundong's residence this morning, but he wasn't there. Later, I met these two senior sisters of mine. After chatting for a while, I found out that Li Yundong had moved out again. Well, let me introduce them. These two senior sisters are Feng Na and Cheng Cheng. They know where Li Yundong lives now, and they happen to be looking for Li Yundong, so I think we might as well go together. Yin Mingfan smiled and extended her hand to the two of them. She said in a reserved and polite manner, Hello, I'm Yin Mingfan from Dongxing Real Estate. Nice to meet you. Feng Na and Cheng Cheng shook hands with Yin Mingfan and complimented each other politely. Zhou Qin said, Then I'll go get my car. Feng Na, Cheng Cheng, will you take my car? Feng Na was about to speak when suddenly, the roar of a motor came from afar. The women looked over at the same time and saw a very flashy Lamborghini convertible sports car drive over and stop beside them. A beautiful woman wearing sunglasses looked at Yin Mingfan and Zhou Qin in surprise. President Yin? Zhou Qin? Why are you two here? Yin Mingfan laughed. President Chao, I should be the one asking you that, right? Why are you here? Chao Kefi smiled bitterly and said, Don't mention it. A few days ago, this old man suddenly disappeared from my sight. I have been looking for him for 2 days. When I tried to call him, his phone was turned off. He is really mysterious. I came to school today to see if I can find him. Yin Mingfan smiled and said, President Chao, it's not easy to trouble you. What's so important? Chao Kefi smiled and smoothly changed the topic. If it wasn't important, would I be in such a hurry to find him? By the way, you're not looking for him, are you? Yin Mingfan didn't continue to ask. After all, people in this circle knew that the way to get to the bottom of things was the most annoying way to talk. She smiled and said, President Chao is really smart. We're going to find Li Yundong. Let's go together. Chao Kefi was overjoyed. That's really good timing. Great, let's go together. Then she smiled at Zhou Qin and said, Zhou Qin, I've never given you a ride before. Will you do me the honor today? Zhou Qin smiled and said, then I'll accept your invitation. Then she turned to Ching Cheng and Feng Na and said, then you two will take President Yin's car? Feng Na pursed her lips and smiled. No, I want to take the convertible. I've never sat in such a good car in my life. As she said that, she and Ching Cheng, who was beside her, giggled shamelessly. Although the words of the two people were snobbish, Chao Kefi and Yin Mingfan both felt that the two girls were simple-minded. They were much better than those hypocrites in society who didn't say anything but wanted to die in their hearts. Yin Mingfan smiled and shook her head. It seems that President Chao is smart. She would rather be under pressure to buy a good car. Now you're proud. Chao Kefi smiled and said, President Yin, you're rich. Don't tease a little girl like me. Let me go. Zhou Qin got into the front seat and fastened her seat belt. She smiled and said, you two don't have to flatter each other. Let's go first. While speaking, Chao Kefi had already started the car. The power of the small sports car's motor was indeed different. As soon as they started, they left the Audi A6 several spaces behind them. After Feng Na told Chao Kefi the address, Chao Kefi said in disbelief, why is he staying in a hotel again? What's wrong with his family? Did he quarrel with Su Chan? No way, I think they're very loving. Zhou Qin supported her head with one hand and leaned her elbow against the car door, allowing the wind to mess up her hair. She sighed faintly and said, he is too mysterious. I can never see through him. But the more I can't see through him, the more I want to get closer to him to take a look. Hearing Zhou Qin's words, Chao Kefi, Feng Na, and Ching Ching all fell silent. They all sighed in their hearts. Yes, Zhou Qin is right. This boy seems to have a magical power, attracting them unconsciously to get close to him, understand him, and own him. Li Yundong, who are you? Why are you so mysterious? /OM/ Chapter 143. Go to Watch Network. For a moment, the people in the car did not speak, silently thinking about their own things. About 10 minutes later, Chao Kefi drove to Li Yundong's temporary residence, followed by Yin Mingfan in her Audi. Watch Net. They got out of the car and walked into the hotel in a grandiose manner. The waiter in the hall was shocked when he saw them. Wow, good heavens! There are so many women, and all of them are top-grade beauties with different temperaments and postures. These days, the more beautiful a woman was, the more likely she was to be kept as a mistress, and the less likely she was to show her face outside. The probability of seeing a top-grade beauty on the street was really small. But suddenly seeing so many top-grade beauties walking together really shocked all the waiters and guests at the front desk of the hotel. They all looked at Zhou Qin and the others in a daze, their minds full of questions. What are these beauties doing here? Are they a group of big stars? Among this group of people, Yin Mingfan and Chao Kefi intentionally or unintentionally fell half a step behind Zhou Qin. Feng Na soon discovered this subtle thing, so she also pulled Ching Cheng and fell half a step behind Zhou Qin. This formed a situation where Zhou Qin was the leader of the group. Zhou Qin also seemed to be used to this kind of behavior. She walked to the front desk and asked, "Excuse me, is Li Yundong staying here?" The receptionist reacted as if she had just woken up from a dream. She was unconsciously shocked by Zhou Qin's temperament and aura. She subconsciously checked the computer, then nodded and said, "Yes, you are?" Zhou Qin said, "We are his friends. May I ask which room he is staying in?" The receptionist said, "Room 2203. Zhou Qin nodded, and then the group walked toward room 2203 in a mighty manner. The receptionist saw that each of them had an extraordinary temperament, and two of them were even dressed like successful women. She did not dare to neglect them, so she quickly used the walkie-talkie to inform the nearby waiters and asked them to lead the way. When Zhou Qin arrived at the door of Li Yundong's room, she glanced at the sign on the door, frowned, and then knocked on the door. However, there was no response from inside. Behind her, Yin Mingfan and Chao Kefi looked at each other and said, "Is he not in?" Zhou Qin leaned against the door and listened for a while. She said decisively, "There's a sound inside. There should be someone inside." With that, she knocked hard on the door and shouted, "Li Yundong, it's me." But the door was still tightly shut and no one opened it. Watch net. 7KOM. Net. Super_speed. More. Nu Zhou frowned. She dialed the cell phone she had given to Su Chan and found that there was also a ringtone coming from the room, but no one answered for a long time. Zhou Qin became more and more confused. This powerful impact was like a high-voltage electric current passing through her body, making her instantly lose the ability to move and speak. She froze in place as if she had been petrified, and her face was full of fear. She unconsciously opened her mouth, wanting to shout in fear, but she couldn't make a sound. Go to the internet. Yin Ming Fan, who was standing to one side, was horrified. She subconsciously wanted to reach out and pull Shen Hui away, but Chao Kefi suddenly said in a low voice, "Don't move." Yin Ming Fan suddenly withdrew her hand. She realized that if she reached out and touched Shen Hui, she would most likely fall into a dangerous situation like her. Yin Ming Fan asked anxiously, "What's going on?" Although Chao Kefi had worked hard in society for so many years and had encountered many strange people and strange things, it was the first time she had seen something like this. With a strange expression on her face, she shook her head and said with a wry smile, "I don't know. I always feel that there is danger." Yin Ming Fan was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. What should I do? If something happens to Shen Hui, how can I explain it to my uncle? Feng Na and Ching Ching looked at each other. They wanted to help, but they didn't know how. Their feet seemed to be nailed to the ground and they didn't move at all. Only Zhou Qin had been staring at Li Yundong. She suddenly said, "Let me try?" Chao Kefi said, "Can this kind of cultivation be disturbed?" Zhou Qin's brows were tightly knitted together. She suddenly remembered the terrifying qi deviation that Li Yundong had experienced in the classroom last time. This time, there was no doubt in Zhou Qin's heart. Li Yundong must be practicing qigong. However, when she touched him last time, although Li Yundong had a great reaction, he had still woken up. She didn't know what would happen this time. Zhou Qin bit her lip and hesitated for a moment. She didn't know what would happen if she reached out her hand, but there seemed to be a voice telling her, "You should reach out and help him." Zhou Qin gritted her teeth fiercely and finally reached out her hand. She didn't know that this decision would completely change her future fate. As soon as Zhou Qin's hand touched Li Yundong's shoulder, she immediately felt a wave of heat spreading from her arm to her body. Then, the blood all over her body began to boil violently. This kind of burning pain immediately twisted her beautiful face. At this time, Li Yundong was like a volcano that was about to erupt at any time. The vigorous and majestic yuanyang qi in his body had nowhere to vent. Although Su Chan was helping him release the qi, although Su Chan's cultivation was higher than Li Yundong's, the yuan qi in his body was much stronger than Su Chan's. With Su Chan's physique, it was impossible for her to withstand the fierce attack of the yuanyang qi. Therefore, she was also pulled into Li Yundong's illusion and followed him into qigong deviation. Fortunately, Shen Hui had slapped Su Chan rashly, which immediately helped Su Chan share a lot of the pressure. Moreover, Shen Hui herself was a virgin with a pure yin body, which could be called an excellent furnace. The pure yin qi in her body could best neutralize Li Yundong's yuanyang qi. But although she had come to share the pressure, she still couldn't help Li Yundong get out of the danger. Moreover, Shen Hui was young and weak. Although she was a good furnace, her foundation was weak. She couldn't withstand the fierce attack of the yuanyang flame. She couldn't hold on for more than 2 days like Su Chan could. At present, after a while, she was afraid that Li Yundong's yuanyang qi would collapse and she would completely become a vegetable with all her meridians destroyed. Fortunately, Zhou Qin was decisive enough. As soon as she stretched out her hand, the pressure was immediately divided from 3 people to 4 people. Moreover, she was one of the few virgins in the world, the demon of Shenin furnace. Even Su Chan, who had the extreme yin body, had to praise her when she saw her. Moreover, Zhou Qin was already an adult. Her bones, flesh, meridians and internal organs were enough to withstand the fierce attack of yuanyang qi. The pressure on Su Chan suddenly lightened. She was the one with the highest cultivation here. Now that the pressure was suddenly reduced, she immediately regained consciousness. As soon as she regained consciousness, she immediately poked Li Yundong's back, head, and other major acupoints with both hands. When the other women in the room saw that Su Chan had woken up, they were immediately surprised and delighted. Cheng Cheng was so happy that she wanted to clap her hands, but she was stopped by Feng Na, who made a gesture to keep quiet, for fear of disturbing Su Chan. All the major acupoints in Li Yundong's body were poked, and his acupoints were opened. For a moment, the Yuanyang genuine qi in his body finally found a place to vent. Qi was the commander of blood. As soon as his breath calmed down, the boiling blood in his body also slowly calmed down. As soon as the blood in his body calmed down, the majestic thing on Li Yundong's waist also slowly softened. The expression on Li Yundong's face also slowly returned to normal. The extra Yuanyang qi in his body excreted through all the acupoints in his body, causing the whole room to be filled with clouds and mist for a while, as if it was a fairyland. Feng Na, Qing Cheng and Yin Mengfan, the three virgins, smelled the supreme yang qi in the world. For a moment, the yin and yang qi in their bodies intertwined. They couldn't help but feel their hearts beat faster and their cheeks flushed. Even they didn't understand why they were suddenly aroused. Chow Kefi was a mature woman who had experienced sexual intercourse, so she was naturally more aroused. She looked at Li Yundong with watery eyes, her legs unconsciously twisting, her sinuses closing and closing, and her breathing slightly rapid. Women like them who had only smelled this kind of aura were already like this. Those like Zhou Qin and Shen Hui who had been directly attacked by Li Yundong's Yuanyang qi, were naturally even more unbearable. After a while Li Yundong finally woke up. As soon as he opened his eyes, he found Zhou Qin standing in front of him. Her cheeks were red and she was looking at him with seductive eyes. Her eyes were full of concern and shyness. Li Yundong was shocked. Zhou Qin? Why are you here? I remember I was with my girls. The following words were not suitable for children. Li Yundong stopped abruptly. He turned his head and saw that all the beauties he knew were in the room, from Feng Na and Qing Cheng to Yin Mengfan and Chow Kefi. Even Shen Hui, who was against him, was there. What made Li Yundong the most uneasy was that all the women in the room were looking at him with affection and shyness, as if he had done something to them. What's going on? Li Yundong didn't know what had happened before, so he asked in confusion. Li Yundong quickly turned around to look for Su Chan. When he looked back, he saw that Su Chan was looking at him with tears in her eyes, and then she threw herself into his arms. Seeing that Su Chan had suddenly cried so hard, Li Yundong couldn't help but become more and more flustered. His mind was in a mess as he remembered that in the illusion, he had only been fooling around with the little girl at first. Later, Shen Hui had suddenly appeared inexplicably, and then Zhou Qin had also appeared inexplicably. They had been fooling around together. When Li Yundong thought about it, he felt that he was simply shameless and dissolute. Seeing that the little girl was crying like a pear blossom in the rain, Li Yundong couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He thought to himself, "Oh no, did I do something that is intolerable and worse than a beast?" Last week he ranked 9th on the list of flowers. According to the rules, this week there will be 3 nights on Tuesday and Saturday. /om/ Chapter 144. Go to watch net. The great horror between reality and illusion was that it was difficult for people to tell what was real and what was fake. Go to watch net. Although Li Yundong had completely woken up now, he still couldn't tell whether what had happened in the illusion was real or not, especially when he found himself with 2 girls he didn't like in the illusion. When he opened his eyes, these 2 girls were right in front of him. How could this not make Li Yundong feel uneasy? Li Yundong's eyes were blank for a long time before he came to his senses. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead, looked up at Zhou Qin and the others in the room and smiled dryly. Then he lowered his head, patted the girl on the shoulder and asked tentatively, "Hey, what are you crying for?" There was no reason for the girl not to cry. Cultivators only had 2 chances to reach the Zhuji phase in their lives. The first one, which was supposed to be a sure success, had almost caused both of them to die. If it hadn't been for the coincidence of Zhou Qin and the others, the 2 of them would have had to go to the bridge of helplessness. Thinking about it now, the girl was especially scared. She hated herself for not being thoughtful, but she was also afraid that what if Li Yundong failed to reach the Zhuji phase the next time? What would she do then? Su Chan put her arms around Li Yundong's waist and cried loudly. There was an indescribable sadness in her cry. Li Yundong had ulterior motives in his heart. Listening to the cry, he naturally felt more and more uncomfortable. He felt that the girl seemed to have suffered some great grievance, and his heart became more and more afraid. Did I really do something wrong to Su Chan? No way. I'm not such a beast, am I? Thinking of this, Shen Hui, who had been standing in the same place with a dull expression, suddenly blushed and stamped her feet. She scolded in a low voice, "Beast? Then her tears fell and she turned around and rushed out. Damn it. This expression, this tone, isn't it the appearance of those chaste women in old movies after they have been insulted? Li Yundong's mind buzzed. No way, did I really do something beastly? Otherwise, how could there be such a coincidence? Would this girl rush in with a pair of scissors and yell, "I'm going to cut you," or something like that? Li Yundong waited for a long time in a daze. Fortunately, he didn't see Shen Hui rush back. Yin Mingfan saw Shen Hui rush out as if she had suffered some great grievance. For a moment, she didn't know whether she should chase after her or stay. Chao Kefi, who was beside her, pushed her and whispered, "Hurry up and catch up with her. Shen Hui has a childish temper. Don't let anything happen to her. If there's anything here, we can talk about it another day. Watch net." Only then did Yin Mingfan sigh in her heart. She said goodbye to Li Yundong and hurriedly chased after him. Li Yundong's mind was in a mess. How could he be in the mood to care about Yin Mingfan and Shen Hui? He hesitated for a long time and finally went all out. If he wanted to kill them, he could just say it. What was the point of crying? Li Yundong lowered his head and patted Su Chan on the shoulder again. He said softly, "Hey, don't cry. If you have something to say, tell me. My heart is in a mess from crying. What's wrong with me?" Only then did Su Chan raise her hazy, tearful eyes. She leaned over to Li Yundong's ear and sobbed in a low voice. The Zhuji phase failed. Li Yundong was shocked. He asked in a low voice, puzzled, "But didn't you tell me that you succeeded?" Su Chan whimpered, That was your inner demon fantasy." Li Yundong immediately let out a long sigh of relief and patted his chest with a rare look of relief on his face. "Fortunately, my reputation has been preserved. Those beasts turned out to be things in the illusion. That means it's not real. How lucky." Seeing that Li Yundong didn't look sad, Su Chan couldn't help but be surprised. "You're not sad? Not sad at all?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "What's there to be sad about?" As he said this, he muttered in his heart, "If I do something wrong to you and you ignore me in a fit of anger, I will be sad." Seeing Li Yundong's reaction, Su Chan thought that he was broad-minded, so she couldn't help but cry again. "It's all my fault. I made your 6 senses unclean, and your desires are not yet dead." 6 senses unclean? Not yet dead? There's gossip. At this time, Feng Na, Ching Ching and Chao Kefi, the women who hadn't left yet, suddenly pricked up their ears, showing expressions of interest. Li Yundong also felt that these words were very ambiguous. He coughed dryly and comforted Su Chan in turn. "It's okay. Don't you still have one more chance? You can come again in the future. You have to know that the sage has a saying, failure is the mother of success." When Su Chan heard this, she couldn't help but burst into laughter. She said angrily, "You're so annoying. When did the sage say that?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "There are many things that sage Confucius said that you haven't heard of. You're so ignorant." Su Chan was amused by Li Yundong, and the distress in her heart gradually disappeared. She wiped away her tears and said with a smile, "What did sage Confucius say that I didn't say? Tell me." "I've read the Analects of Confucius since I was a child, and I've long memorized it. How could I not know?" Li Yundong laughed and didn't answer the little girl's words. He turned his head and greeted Zhou Qin and the others with a smile. "Why are you here?" Zhou Qin was still recalling what had happened in the illusion. For a moment, her cheeks were so red that it seemed as if blood was about to drip out. She was suddenly awakened by Li Yundong's shout and said incoherently, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. Go to the internet." Suddenly, his expression changed and he said seriously, "If you want me to protect those boring low-level guys I met last time, don't mention it. I'm afraid I'll beat them until they can't take care of themselves." Chao Kefi smiled. "No, I can't find a suitable male companion for a party. After thinking about it, I came to you." As she said this, Chao Kefi turned to look at Su Chan. "Su Chan, it's okay if I borrow your boyfriend for one night, right?" Su Chan blinked her eyes and said innocently, "Okay." Feng Na pulled Ching Cheng's arm out of the room. "Oh no," she said in a low voice. "Su Chan isn't scheming at all, but Chao Kefi is. I'm afraid that Li Yundong won't be able to withstand the double attack of Chao Kefi's money and flesh bombs." "Oh no," Ching Ching said. "I think Su Chan looks stupid," Ching Ching said in a low voice, "but in fact she's not stupid at all. And even if she really is stupid, that's because luck favors fools. I don't believe that Li Yundong will give up on Su Chan and choose Chao Kefi." What if this guy takes both the big and the small? Feng Na asked suddenly. Ching Ching was stunned. No way. He doesn't look like that kind of person. What if he does? Feng Na asked. Ching Ching and Feng Na looked at each other, and they both realized that if Li Yundong was really that kind of person, it meant that he could accept Chao Kefi and everyone else, including the two girls who had a crush on Li Yundong. Ching Ching and Feng Na looked at each other. But if Li Yundong really did that, then was he still worthy of their love? This was simply a devil's proposition. Feng Na and Ching Ching were at a loss for a moment. They originally wanted to warn Su Chan, but they couldn't help but take a wait-and-see attitude. In their hearts, they hoped that Li Yundong could resist this temptation, but at the same time, they hoped that he couldn't resist it. Human beings were the most complicated animals in the world, especially women. Li Yundong didn't notice Feng Na and Ching Ching's whispering at all. He smiled and said to Chao Kefi, "Going to the banquet? What about the reward last time?" Chao Kefi laughed and said, "How dare you mention it last time? You made me pay so much money and you still have the nerve to ask for a reward?" Li Yundong laughed dryly and didn't dare to mention this matter again. He turned his head to look at Zhou Qin and said with a smile, "Zhou Qin, I have to thank you for finding me a good job. This master is too difficult to serve. He's ordering me around like a permanent worker." This was originally a joke, but when Zhou Qin heard it, she felt that it stung her. She couldn't bear to see Li Yundong and Su Chan being intimate, nor could she bear to see Li Yundong and Chao Kefi laughing and talking happily. She only felt sad in her heart and suddenly flared up. "So I was wrong to help you?" After that, she turned and walked away. Li Yundong was stunned. He hadn't expected that Zhou Qin would be angry because of this. Su Chan reacted quickly. She grabbed Zhou Qin and said sincerely, "Zhou Qin, thank you so much for today." Zhou Qin grew up in a rich and powerful family. She was a girl who was extremely good at controlling her emotions. She had been too immersed in the illusion and suddenly returned to reality. The huge contrast made her a little out of control. After being pulled by Su Chan, she immediately stabilized and stood still. She forced a smile and said, "Why are you thanking me?" Su Chan thought to herself, "If it weren't for you, Li Yundong and I would have been dead." But these words couldn't be said directly, so Su Chan smiled and said, "Anyway, thank you." After that, Su Chan turned her head and made a face at Li Yundong. She changed the topic and said, "You haven't told me what Confucius said just now. Don't even think about running away." Li Yundong's stomach happened to be growling like a drum. He took the opportunity to get off the stage and said with a smile, "Confucius said, if you don't sleep at noon, you will collapse in the afternoon. If you don't eat a meal, you will starve into a mummy." Su Chan said angrily, "When did Confucius say such a thing? You're talking nonsense." Li Yundong's face was serious and he said seriously, "Who said that? I have the famous words of second sage Mencius as a witness to prove that this sentence is correct." Li Yundong's serious look made Zhou Qin, who was resentful in her heart, couldn't help but be curious. What did Mencius say? Li Yundong waved his hand and said, "Confucius said if you don't sleep at noon, you will collapse in the afternoon. If you don't eat a meal, you will starve into a mummy." Mencius said, "Confucius is right." After this, Su Chan, Feng Na, Ching Ching and Zhou Qin couldn't help laughing /om/. Chapter 145. Go to watch net. Love was the most unreasonable thing in the world. Although Li Yundong had failed to reach the Zhuji phase, he didn't feel sad or regretful at all. Instead, he was joking around with others. If it had been other cultivators, they would have been severely criticized for having a rough character and not making progress. Go to watch net. 7 KOM. However, Su Chan felt that Li Yundong was easygoing, generous and cheerful. He was the best cultivator in the world. As soon as Li Yundong made a joke, the panic and fear in Su Chan's heart caused by Li Yundong's failure to reach the Zhuji phase disappeared, replaced by a strong attachment and admiration for this boy. Su Chan touched her stomach and pouted. "It's okay if you don't say it. I'm hungry now." Feng Na smiled and said, "Then let's go eat. It's time for lunch." Chao Kefi smiled and said, "Then let's go eat. It's time for lunch." Li Yundong clapped his hands and said, "Great, finally someone is taking care of the food. Girl, eat to your heart's content later." Chao Kefi only knew that Li Yundong had an amazing capacity for alcohol, but she didn't know that Su Chan could eat. She smiled and said, "Eat as much as you want. One meal won't make me poor." After she finished speaking, Li Yundong, Su Chan, and Zhou Qin suddenly thought of Lu Chuan. The three of them couldn't help but look at each other and burst into laughter at the same time. Zhou Qin pursed her lips and smiled. President Chow, one meal can make a person poor. Last time someone paid for us. It was 6 figures. Chow Kefi was so scared that she gasped. Don't scare me. I can't compare to a rich and powerful family like Zhou Qin. Li Yundong smiled and said, Don't worry, President Chow. If it's really not enough, I'll let Zhou Qin pay the bill. After that, he winked at Zhou Qin. Although these words hurt people's wallets, Zhou Qin liked to hear them. For no reason, she felt happy in her heart, and the smile on her face grew wider. They talked and laughed as they walked out of the hotel. Except for Li Yundong, who was a big man, the rest of the group were beautiful women. As soon as they stood on the street, they immediately attracted countless eyes. Go to watch net. 7 KOM. Let's go, let's go. Feng Na had goosebumps all over her body as she couldn't help but urge them. Chow Kefi walked up to the car, plugged in the key and started the car. Mr. Yin drove away, she said with a smile. So we'll have to squeeze together. Li Yundong, why don't you hold Su Chan and sit in the front, and the 3 beauties can sit in the back? Li Yundong smiled and was about to answer when he suddenly heard a loud roar from the street. F***CK, stop right there. Following that, a series of shouts rang out, Stop, don't run. Li Yundong was still trying to figure out what was going on when he suddenly saw a person running across the road. He just so happened to know this person. It was none other than Air Lu, the one who had clashed with him several times before. Su Chan also saw it clearly. She pulled Li Yundong's sleeve and said, Hey Yundong, isn't this the one I kicked last time? Why are so many people chasing after him? While they were talking, Air Lu had already run out of their line of sight. 7 or 8 gangsters with iron rods in their hands were hot on his heels. Stop right there. You can run away, but you can't run away from the temple. The gangsters shouted fiercely. Pay me back now or I'll kill you. Li Yundong recalled how Air Lu had tried to threaten Su Chan last time. His anger flared up again. He sneered. This is what they call, those who commit too much evil will bring about their own destruction. Serves you right. Karma. What's wrong? Chow Kefi asked curiously. Did something happen between you two? Feng Na told her what had happened from beginning to end. Chow Kefi couldn't help but sneer and scold, You deserve it. You could have taken the right path, but you chose to take the crooked path. Karma will come to him sooner or later. As she spoke, Air Lu suddenly tripped and fell to the ground as if to prove her words were true. Perhaps Air Lu had run too fast, but when he turned around to look at his pursuers, he tripped and fell to the ground with a thud. His pursuers immediately caught up to him and surrounded him tightly. They punched and kicked him while cursing, F***CK. Why aren't you paying me back? F***CK. If you don't pay me back, I'll cripple you. Air Lu curled his body into a ball to protect his chest and head. He was howling in pain from the beatings. Go to see net. 7 KOM. Net. Super_speed. Faster. No. At first, Li Yundong thought it was a great way to vent his anger. But after a while, a middle-aged woman ran towards him, wailing loudly. Stop. Stop. You're going to kill me. Oh my son. What have you done to deserve this? Hey, isn't that? Su Chan recognized the middle-aged woman immediately. It was the woman who had gotten into a fight with Li Yundong at the market. Li Yundong frowned but said nothing. The middle-aged woman didn't care about the menacing iron rods in the hoodlum's hands. She rushed forward and threw herself on top of Air Lu to protect her son. She was like an old mother hen protecting her chick. She spread out her wings to protect her son from any harm. The leader of the group was a bald, green-skinned gangster. He pointed an iron rod at Air Lu's mother and yelled, Get the F***CK out of my way, you old bastard. Your son owes money and he doesn't want to pay it back. Are you going to pay it for him? The middle-aged woman's tears and snot streamed down her face. Son, what kind of money do you owe this time? I told you not to gamble. Why won't you listen to me? There's no way this family can take this kind of loss. Chapter 146. Go to watch net. Zhou Qin pulled him aside and said in a low voice, Your fist is heavy. Don't kill anyone. I'll take care of this. Go to watch net. After that, she took a step forward and glanced at the gangsters indifferently. Do you only know young Master He? Do you know who I am? Zhou Qin was so low-key at school that the people around her didn't know her background. How could these gangsters know? They looked at each other and shook their heads. Although some people saw that Zhou Qin was beautiful and wanted to tease her, when they saw the cold and arrogant expression on Zhou Qin's face, they swallowed their words for a moment. In the underworld, it was not about whose hands were the best, but whose eyes were more vicious. The gangster saw that Zhou Qin had a unique temperament that only people who had been in a high position for a long time had. He was shocked and couldn't help but lower his stance. You are? Zhou Qin sneered and said, Call young Master He now and tell him that I, Zhou Qin, am in charge of this matter. The gangster picked up the phone doubtfully. After finally dialing, he told her what had happened here in a low voice. Then he glanced at Zhou Qin and said Zhou Qin's name. However, after he finished speaking, there was no movement on the phone for a long time. Only heavy breathing could be heard. The gangster couldn't help but be a little puzzled. He couldn't help asking, Big brother, what do you think? Zhou Qin suddenly shouted, Young Master He, aren't you afraid of getting into trouble by hanging out with these people from the underworld? I advise you to stop as soon as possible, lest you bring about your own destruction. This fierce shout could be heard clearly through the phone. The green-skinned gangster quickly heard a gnashing voice coming from the phone, Do as she says. The green-skinned gangster looked at Zhou Qin with both respect and fear, then at Li Yundong. Then he spat at Lu and his mother. Count yourselves lucky. Next time, don't fall into my hands again. The green-skinned gangster scolded Li Yundong and his mother. When Li Yundong saw that he was still trying to intimidate him before he left, he suddenly flew into a rage and evil rose in his heart. Li Yundong was so angry that his hair stood on end, and the blood vessels on his neck bulged. A stream of blood qi rushed to the top of his head, and the majestic qi instantly gathered from his chest to his throat. After being squeezed, he let out a terrifying roar, Get lost. In the past, Zhang Fei's roar had scared a general of Cao Cao to death. Li Yundong's roar was really as powerful as Zhang Yida's roar back then. Watch net. The passers-by on both sides felt as if there was a sudden clap of thunder in their ears. They felt as if their internal organs had been dug out by someone. They felt as if their guts were being torn apart, their hearts and lungs were shaking, and their brains were buzzing. As for the gangster who bore the brunt of Li Yundong's attack, he was so frightened that his gallbladder nearly ruptured, and his legs went limp. If he had been riding on a tall horse, he would have fallen off on the spot, broken his neck and died. The gangster felt dizzy and his ears were buzzing. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't exert any strength in his legs. His body went limp and he was about to fall to the ground. Although the gangsters on the side were all scared out of their wits by Li Yundong's roar, they were not the main targets of the attack, so they were still able to hold on. One by one they supported the gangster who led them and fled in panic. When Li Yundong saw them go far away, the anger in his heart gradually dissipated. He turned his head and saw Su Chan massaging Chao Kefi's chest. Feng Na and Ching Cheng were both rubbing their temples and pressing their chests, and their faces were full of pain. Only Zhou Qin was in high spirits as if she hadn't been hurt in the slightest. Li Yundong was stunned, as if he couldn't understand why these women were acting as if nothing had happened to Zhou Qin. But he didn't have time to think too much about it. He turned to Feng Na and the others with an apologetic look on his face. I'm sorry, he said. Feng Na gave Li Yundong a bitter smile and gave him a thumbs up. Li Yundong, I really have to hand it to you today. I've seen you in so many fights and you were the most impressive one today. Ching Ching laughed and rubbed her chest. Yeah, she said. Zhang Fei was just like that back at Changban Bridge. At least let me know if you're going to yell at me. You almost scared the life out of me. Chao Kefi's heart was already in a bad condition. After being scared by Li Yundong, she almost fell ill again. Fortunately, Su Chan was quick to help her stop the disease. She gasped for a while and forced a smile. Oh my, you're amazing. Today I finally know what it means to be majestic and like a god. That loud roar almost took my life. That was close, that was close. Just as he was about to say something, Lu's mother suddenly pulled him over. As soon as the two of them arrived, Lu's mother pulled Lu to his knees and kowtowed 3 times to the ground. Lu's mother pulled Lu to his knees and kowtowed 3 times. Li Yundong hurriedly reached out to help them up. Hey, what are you doing? Lu's mother's face was covered in tears. She slapped herself hard on the face and wailed, I was blind. I stole $100 from my benefactor. Who would have thought that my benefactor would repay me with kindness? You saved my good-for-nothing son and me. I don't have anything to repay you with, so I'll just kowtow to you a few times. Then she bent down and kowtowed again. Go to CNET. 7KOM. Rainbow caret asterisk literature underscore learning percent super hashtag speed. Update. Noon Li Yundong quickly helped her up and sighed. Auntie, let's not talk about what happened back then. You and your son should go home now. Just teach your son well from now on. Li Yundong turned his head to look at Lu and scolded him. Tell me, is there a son in this world who acts like this? Not only did he not know how to be filial to his mother, but he also caused her to get beaten up in public. A man must have a Buddhist heart. Without it, what difference is there between him and a beast? If it wasn't for your mother, I wouldn't have saved you today. Look at how you were beaten up just now. Your mother would rather they beat her than let these people hurt you. As a 7-foot man, aren't you ashamed? Get up and be filial to your mother. Lu was already feeling guilty, but after hearing Li Yundong's words, he immediately hugged his mother and wailed. Mom, I won't gamble anymore. Lu's mother couldn't help but cry as well. She patted her son's back and said, Good, good. Live a good life from now on. The mother and son hugged each other and cried bitterly. Li Yundong's heart ached when he saw how heartbroken they were, so he said, all right. Stop crying and go home. It's not good to stay here. Besides, you should be thanking her. Li Yundong pulled Zhou Qin to his side. Lu's mother kowtowed to Zhou Qin again. This young lady is so beautiful and kind-hearted. She must be the reincarnation of the merciful Guanyin Bodhisattva. I see that you and this benefactor are a perfect match. I hope that you two will have many children and live a life of prosperity. Li Yundong couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Zhou Qin's face turned red, and Su Chan's heart was filled with jealousy. Lu's mother thanked Li Yundong again, then pulled him up to his feet. Good people, she muttered. There are still good people in this world. Good people will be rewarded. Then she pulled her son further and further away. The two of them had walked a dozen meters away when Lu suddenly broke free of his mother's hand and ran to Li Yundong. He knelt down with a thud and kowtowed 3 times. His forehead started to bleed. Lu ate shit and lost my mind. I can't believe that I went against a good person like you. From now on, I will turn over a new leaf. Big brother, if you need anything, just tell me. I don't care if I have to climb a mountain of swords or dive into a sea of fire. If Lu ever frown, I'm not a man. After he finished speaking, he fiercely clenched his teeth and forcefully broke his little finger with a crack. Zhou Qin and the others were so frightened that their faces turned pale. They let out a cry. Li Yundong was also startled. He stepped forward to check on his mother's injury, but Lu stubbornly jumped up and chased after his mother. When Li Yundong and the others saw the mother and son leave, he sighed and said, Sigh, something happened out of nowhere. I'm so angry that I'm full. Feng Na rubbed her chest for a while and slowly calmed down. She smiled and said, That won't do. You're full, but we're still hungry. Ching Ching added, Yes, especially after you scared me just now. I'm even hungrier. Li Yundong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What kind of logic is that? Su Chan covered her stomach and said coquettishly, Confucius said if you don't sleep at noon, you'll collapse in the afternoon. If you don't eat a meal, you'll starve to death. Yundong, I'm going to starve to death. Li Yundong laughed. Mencius said, Confucius is right. Let's go eat. All the girls burst into laughter. In a guest room of the Xingyuan Hotel, after young master he hung up his phone, he angrily threw it on the ground. Although the ground was covered with a thick carpet, the phone was still broken into pieces. The phone rolled over and landed at the feet of a pair of milky white high heels. The owner of this pair of feet bent down and picked up the phone. Her low-collared chest revealed a deep ravine, which made young Master He's eyes filled with evil thoughts for a moment. This woman was Ding Nan. She threw young Master He's phone on the bed and said leisurely, Why are you so angry, young Master He? If you don't welcome me, I'll leave now. Anyway, I haven't even sat here for a long time. Young Master He stared at Ding Nan like a wolf. He suddenly grinned like a crocodile opening its bloody mouth. He smiled hypocritically and said, Look at what you're saying. We've known each other for a long time. Tell me, why are you looking for me? As he spoke, young Master He sat down on his seat, crossed his legs, lit a cigarette and blew out a smoke ring. Ding Nan smiled and asked, You were angry about Zhou Qin just now, weren't you? When young Master He heard Zhou Qin's name, the expression on his face immediately became fierce and ferocious. This B***TCH is going against me everywhere. I'll teach her a lesson sooner or later. F***CK. I have a way to help you deal with her. Are you willing to listen? Ding Nan smiled like a demonic poppy flower. Young Master He looked at her in confusion. What can you do? Ding Nan walked up to young Master He, bent down and whispered in his ear for a while. At first, young Master He's gaze was still greedily staring at the ravine on Ding Nan's chest, but after a while, his gaze became sinister and shocked. After Ding Nan finished speaking, young Master He raised his head and looked at Ding Nan. After staring at her for a while, he slowly said, "The sting at the back of a wasp's tail is the most poisonous. A woman's heart is the most poisonous." This sentence is indeed not wrong at all. Ding Nan straightened up and smiled. Thank you for your praise. If I'm not ruthless, how can I beat her? Moreover, aren't you the ultimate beneficiary? Do it or not. As a man you should make your decision. Young Master He laughed out loud. Of course, why not? I just want to teach this B*TCH a lesson so that she won't look down on me all day long.